So here's the pitch, okay? We've all seen Myth Swifts. It's that outtake show, and it was running it in. I saw chat spamming when I told Jordan to focus. So we're gonna run with that. Strike while the iron is hot. Jordan sitting at his desk at the video team section. I don't know what they do. I don't care what they do. But for the premise of this video, cannot be focused. Watching anime butts on one screen. I don't care what he's doing. Just can't be working. All right. And then he hears Myth Swifts. Big TV right behind him. Myth Swifts playing. Here's the line. Says Jordan, focus. Okay. And then his eyes go wide. He turns around. Turns off the TV. He's trying to get rid of me. He knows he's not focused, but he knows he needs to be. But goes back to his desk, goes back to doing whatever he's doing. But he has to focus. So I'm at his window. Boom, slam on the window. I'm like the Babadook, okay? He doesn't know where I'm coming from. I slam the window, piece of paper, says focus. He does a little bit. He focuses a little bit. He doesn't turn off the anime butts. No. He flips his hat around, Ash Ketchum style. I don't know. And then he goes back to doing anything he wants, but not focusing. That's not enough for me. That's not enough for hi-rez. It's not enough for what we stand for. So I appear behind the wall behind him, okay? Boom, Mifflin, up there. I tell him to tighten up. He needs to focus. He does a little bit more. He focuses a little bit, but not enough, okay? And then it's not enough for me. It's not enough for me, okay? We have to go even further beyond that, all right? He does eventually close the screen, but that's not enough. I'm still appearing. I'm appearing everywhere. I'm in the bathroom. I'm in his cereal. I'm in his snacks. I'm telling him to focus, and eventually he switches desks. I'm under his desk, okay? I'm telling him to focus there, and that's where it happens. He sits in a maxonomic chair, his eyes dilate, and he finally finds his focus.
Okay. Approved.
I sold it? I sold it! Yes! I'm gonna sell so many chairs.
Jordan, what the was that? We just lived a fever dream. I have no idea what just happened, and we approved it.
What kind of anime butts we talking? What kind of anime butts we talking?
That's right, as the chair ad king, all new chair ads have to go through me. And somehow that one made it through. But it's funny, we love Myth, the up-and-comer in the chair ad department. And when you're pitching a great chair like Maxonomic, how can any of these ads go wrong? Maxonomic, of course, our chair sponsor here in the SPL. Our pros are playing in style and also playing in comfort with your Maxonomic chair. Go to needforseat.com and pick up your SMITE Maxonomic chair. You got to be very specific here. Your SMITE game doesn't get improved unless you pick up the SMITE branded Maxonomic chair, or any of them. I'll be honest, any of the Maxonomic chairs will help you out there. Thanks as always to our chair sponsor here in the SPL, Maxonomic. My name is Dolson though, and Taco is now with me on the desk, and we're going to be talking a little Jade Dragons versus Oni Warriors. What could be, Taco, an interesting matchup.
It's always, I think, in good fun whenever teams like Jade Dragons and Oni Warriors meet, because there are just specific lanes that you really want to try and focus on. And I think the solo lane is always one that comes heavily into the discussion when it comes down to these two teams.
Absolutely. I mean, Nika versus Fine-OK, lots to be looked at there. This is the harder matchup, and I don't think that's wrong of me to say, of the weekend for the Oni Warriors. They go up against the Dragons today, and then they'll have a matchup against the Solar Scarabs tomorrow morning. So, with the loss in our previous set, the Valhalla Valkyries now out of the running to get into the Phase 2 playoffs. Valkyries and Scarabs both out, if we're going to kind of round things out. So every other team is now confirmed into the Phase 2 playoffs, and this is all about seeding at this point, changing up what spot you're in going into those Phase 2 playoffs, and Oni Warriors still in a spot where they can control some of their own destiny against the other teams in the league as far as seeding goes. And why not pick things up right where we left off, Taka? Let's talk about the solo lane here for this team, the Oni Warriors specifically, and Nika, where it feels like over recent weeks, Nika's been the guy. He's been the conversation piece that we've had to talk about for this Oni Warriors team. Stalwart for the Oni Warriors, minus a solo kill or two that he dropped to Ducky.
But it was Ducky.
It was Ducky. That's right. You can never count Ducky out. But Nika's going to have to show up big today because he's got a tough matchup against Fine-OK.
Yes, but if there's anybody that I could picture keeping Fine-OK a little bit more reined in, or at least confining him to that solo lane so he won't have as much influence elsewhere, it would definitely be Nika to keep an eye on things. I think that Nika also having a lot of flexibility in terms of his God Pull in general. I know we tend to see him going for a lot of these aggressive solo lane matchups, but that might just be the play style that the Oni Warriors need to try and play for the set catch-up, because if they actually manage to beat the Jade Dragons here today, Dolson, not only do they put a slow towards the Jade Dragons trying to climb their way a little bit into that, like maybe sneak that second position or even higher still, but it's also the Tartarus Titans that I think are the most threatened right now by the Oni Warriors in this set. And again, it's not going to be easy by any means, but I definitely think that Nika has a very strong tendency to also play into the level of opposition that he believes he is up against, and no one's ever going to take Fine OK easily.
No, of course not. And I hate to detract from the talk around Nika, because you're absolutely correct, but the matchup against the Tartarus Titans, standings-wise, very important. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's really the closest that the Oni Warriors are jockeying with right now. The Oni Warriors have the Dragons today, they have the Solar Scarabs tomorrow. Next weekend, they do play the Tartarus Titans. So the Oni Warriors absolutely in a spot now where if you win some of these matchups, you go up against the Titans later, you beat them, you can start to leapfrog the Titans in the standings, improve your own spot in the Phase 2 playoffs, and then they finish out the phase against the Camelot Kings. So two very difficult matchups here for the Oni Warriors team in their Final Four. Nika's the man we've been talking about, and Nika's the man we will be talking to in the pregame interview as Nika joins me to discuss the ins and outs of what this matchup against the Jade Dragons might entail. Nika,
hello.
Thanks for sitting down with me. Hello. Glad to have you here with me. Taco and I talking back and forth a little bit. Valkyries and Scarabs now officially out of the running for the Phase 2 playoffs. You guys are officially in the Phase 2 playoffs, so you've got 4 matchups to go before those playoffs start. What is the team focus? What's the improvement that you guys are looking to make over the next 4 games?
I think just being a bit more consistent, right? I mean, I don't think seeding matters too much for playoffs. I mean,
my next question.
You kind of have to play against, you just have to be the best team, right, when you get to playoffs. So I think for us, it's just like focusing on some stuff in scrims we've been trying, and like just trying to be more consistent as a team overall.
I am curious, and we saw this in a couple of your replays there. Bologna, yes or no? Are you a Bologna truther, or is it circumstantial?
Yeah, of course. But those clips, like, why put them in? I'm missing everything, dude.
Oh man, you hit some damage in there, right? We'll blame Jiffins on that one. We could have put the Ducky solo kills in there. Would that have been preferential?
Oh, come on, dude. Really? Trying to get in my mind before the game?
No, that's on me, Nika. Let's talk about this matchup. You're going up against the Dragons. Fine OK is always a fun lane to follow along with. What do you think it takes to beat the Jade Dragons today?
I think just making sure you don't get ran over early mid-game, I think, gives you the best chance against this team. I mean, they probably punish teams the hardest out of anyone in the league. Like, if you give them a small advantage, they will, definitely win the game off of it, potentially. So we just have to be consistent around, buff timers and stuff like that, mainly, I'd say.
Always got to keep those eyes peeled. I'm excited to see how this one rounds out here, Nika. Thanks for sitting down with me. I apologize for bringing up all that Ducky stuff.
Man.
I'll let you recollect yourself before you get into picks and bans. Thanks for sitting down, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Always able to keep a smile on his face. Look, I had to, right? I had to bring it up. No, I probably didn't
Dude,
have
Nika
to.
foul there, man.
Yeah, that's on me. I'm just a bad interviewer, I guess.
It's not even that. He goes from watching his Bologna clips where the only thing he's two-piecing is the Odin.
Yeah, wait, I went the wrong direction. He was like, "What? I was missing everything in those clips," and I was like, "Well, I could have done you worse." Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry, Nika. We love you. Keep playing well, and the Oni Warriors will look better for it. We gotta pivot our conversation though about the Jade Dragons here, and Nika's lane opponent, and that's Fine OK. I think you could say similar things about Fine OK that you say about Nika as far as tendencies, kind of the structure that they hold within their team, and Fine OK. He's been at the top of his game for a while now, been at the top of that solo laner conversation for a while, so this is a very fun matchup to watch.
I think the main contrast between these two recently from their set performances so far in Split 2, Fine OK has kind of taken over this heavy rotation role. And so we're seeing him play these solo laners that have a little bit more opportunity for the mobility in the early to mid game, and I'm glad that Nika even brought it up during the interview, because the early to mid game is where the Jade Dragons tend to strike fastest, they strike hardest, and if you give them even the slightest edge, they will run you over for the remainder of that game. And with Fine OK kind of leaning a little bit more towards some of these Guardians as well, like the Athenas again, just touching again on that fact that he loves having that rotational capability.
Yep.
And Oni Warriors know that they've got to try and keep control of their buffs, got to try and keep control of those timers, but might be tough to do with Fine OK constantly looking to harass elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's so difficult, isn't it, about this, not only Fine OK, but the Jade Dragons in general, where they love to force this early to mid game, as we've talked about. But it feels like it can come in many different avenues. Maybe it's running it down in the solo lane if we feel like Fine OK has a little bit of a better matchup there. Maybe it's over in the duo lane if we feel like PBM can set up some pressure. And Nika's aware of that, and the Oni Warriors are as well. We got to keep our mind. We got to keep a level head on our shoulders, keep our mindset around these buff timers, and make sure that we're on time for everything. So this is absolutely a matchup, and we set it up this way. Favored by the Jade Dragons, but on any given day, it feels like, and Nika mentioned a lot of consistency in that interview. It feels like any given day that this Oni Warriors team could step up. I do want to pivot the conversation a little bit, though, around this man right here, PBM, the way that he's been playing so far this year. At some point, Taco, it's difficult to say more because Mike has shown us kind of the standard Mike stuff so far this year, that if the duo lane needs to be the lane where we center our mindset, whether it be picks and bans or in-game, Mike can step up to the task.
And not only that, but I think in past sets where these guys have clashed, and maybe we'll be able to get a better idea based off how the drafts go for Jade Dragons versus Oni Warriors in game number 1, but I definitely think that the duo lane has been an emphasis in the past when these two teams have met.
Agreed.
Specifically, Jade Dragons just looking to try and prevent Vote from having any sort of influence, and then they've also done it where they just like prioritize trying to just kill Nika, so they definitely enjoy playing through the side lanes, but I think here today we might see a little bit more emphasis towards that mid jungle because Dardas, Cuvo, it's well known that their players still having to play off of ping, and in comparison to the likes of Sam and Hurry1, who are already consistently strong mechanically, I can only imagine how much more difficult that becomes when you're trying to factor that in as well.
Well, mid jungle receive at least 1 or 2 bans. Tiamat for sure, mid lane ban. Osiris seen a little bit more out of the jungle. Osiris was being first picked throughout our entire first set. Is that just the world we live in now, where Osiris is just that good?
He's just a fairly strong god. He's got a lot of survivability with Lord of the Afterlife. He's a warrior, so you know his base scaling in the early to mid game, it definitely favors teams like Jade Dragons or the Oni Warriors, and it's also just his role flexibility as well.
Sure.
He's relatively vague if you first pick him. Like, I know we see him a lot in the jungle, but it's not always a guarantee, and teams having the advantage, so to say, of being like, oh, well, maybe it's jungle, maybe it's solo. You can try and find out, but either way, we're going to get to see what your draft looks like before we have to decide on where we want that pick to go. Gilgamesh, though, more or less, kind of the same situation.
Yeah, Gilgamesh absolutely in that similar conversation, and Gilgamesh a very, very good pick here. So we'll have to keep our eyes on how the rest of this draft goes for the Jade Dragons, and maybe some of the bans for the Oni Warriors as well. If we're still searching for an answer there, will give us an idea of where the Oni Warriors are leaning. How about this, though? Artemis gets taken away, and Heimdall then is the first pick up here for Vote. And it does feel like in some games where the Oni Warriors are, not to mince words, losing, but they're able to make their way later on into the game. Vote's on this Heimdall. He's played it 4 out of the last 6 games. Hasn't gone, well, outside of one game where he went 0-3, 4-1, 5-1, and then 2-1 on this Heimdall in recent games, so maybe worth the first pick for the Warriors.
I think that Vote just wants to try and prioritize his survivability, maybe anticipating the Jade Dragons looking to be unreasonably aggressive. I mean, it's just hard to get away from the Jade Dragons when they really want to commit to killing and focusing out a specific lane. And this Terra Giannis, Dolson, I think is only further insinuating the fact that Jade Dragons, they are looking to play the map pressure entirely in their favor. Earthen Fury as well, I think, and Terra in general, just going to be a nightmare possibly for the Oni Warriors to deal with. I'm looking mostly at the Serket because, yes, Serket, she does have the anti-heal option against the Terra directly, but having to deal with that Earthen Fury and all of the Sunlock potential is definitely a nightmare within itself.
What do we think here about this Artemis Taco? Artemis, excuse me. Artio. Same idea, different ending.
Artie.
Oh, lock in here for the Oni Warriors. We'll assume that is over to Neilma. We've seen plenty of variety in the support role, and maybe with the way that the bans have gone, you take away Yamoja, Ymir, and now Terra. Those are all picks that Neil would like to play. That fourth option now becomes the RDO. Do you think it works?
I'm not sold that the Jade Dragons are going to believe that this is fully intended for Neilma just yet. There's a chance that
so you're not
we could,
fully buying into that either.
I'm not fully buying it. No, I think that Nika, like RDO is an aggressive Guardian, and I think that in the current meta, she could fare relatively well with a lot of the itemization choices that are available to some of these solo Guardians that we've been seeing as of late. I'm mostly looking towards the cooldown spammage. I think that cooldown reduction is going to be a highlight here for this Oni Warriors draft so far, simply because it is their best measure, and the cripple field that RDO is going to be able to bring to the table as well. Could be some nice lockdown up against that Giannis and Terra. Gilgamesh, maybe not so much because he still has the wins of Shamash, so he might be just kind of like, anything you can do, I can do better towards the Oni Warriors, but I just think that the RDO has, if she's paired with another Guardian or another frontline asset here, could be a decent hurdle for the Jade Dragons to try and deal with.
I'm going to have to wait for the 5th and final pick for an answer on where this RDO goes. Neilma has not played RDO in his last 6 games. Hell, I don't know if any support in the league has played RDO in their last 6 games, and so we will wait and see what the Oni Warriors draft 5th and final overall. Morgan Le Fay drops down to the second wave of picks here. So Giannis locked in for the Dragons, and then there's also some mid lane bans from the Dragons. It's the Morrigan, not Morgan, Morrigan gets banned out, and the Hera as well. Both of those picks, or bans, prioritized over this Morgan Le Fay.
It just seems as though the Jade Dragons are placing a lot of emphasis towards the early to mid game because Cerberus as well, yet another god that I think he strips away protection, so it'll be great because if the Oni Warriors are intending to have this RDO in the solo lane, well, it could potentially be Cerberus for Fine OK then as a response. When I'm not going to say it's a direct counter matchup necessarily, but it's definitely annoying to deal with as the RDO player because you can't really be as just up in their face as you would like. And not only that, but I think, again, the protection and strip away makes it a lot more difficult for you to just frontline in the team fights.
I'm trying to remember. So I distinctly remember the one game that got played on AMC. I think it was Panda Cat who played that one game. Gormizer's giving me the thumbs up, and I trust that man with my life when it comes to things like this and maybe things in general. So AMC for Panda Cat once, and now we're going to get it twice. What do you think about AMC at the moment? Obviously not highly rated by the majority of the league. There are just better options, but is AMC a good option here given the draft?
Amu's and Cobb is fantastic here for Panda Cat. He has so much peel as is between that Cerberus, Terra, and Gilgamesh. And just in case, hey, by the way, we've got Threshold, we've got Portals. We have more mobility than you could possibly need in case the Hives weren't doing it enough as is. Because you have to remember, if Panda Cat, he might even look to prioritize maxing out those Hives earlier on. You have to remember all the movement speed, so he could be zooming. And not only that, but Heim a little bit more punishable in the early game. Same for Serket. I think it's a big turn and burn feature here for the Jade Dragons because that Stinger cripples in the process. So Bifrost, Ambush, Deathbane, all those escapes and mobility that you would traditionally see from that Heim Serket kind of negated.
Some uniqueness that might play well here for the Jade Dragons. Speaking of unique, Guan Yu was not unique for a while there. It was the Guan Yu show in the solo lane and nobody could tell anyone otherwise. Slowed down a little bit. Still maybe a good pick here for the Oni Warriors and Nika specifically to finalize their draft. I think that probably does clear things up. That'd be RDO support and Guan Yu solo, though I know you're a big fan, and for good reason, of maybe some creativity in that support role. But I'm going to operate under the assumption that it's Nika on the Guan Yu. Do you think Guan Yu rounds out this Oni Warriors draft well?
Yeah, I don't think that Guan Yu support is going to necessarily
Not the same as
be
Thor,
ideal.
right?
I think that you would probably be better suited here for the Oni Warriors at least if they, because Talo with Soul, yes, it also has a similar response of eating away at HP. It can definitely shred, but at the same time, I think that Nika might just want the survivability aspect that the cavalry charge is going to be able to introduce here for him in that solo lane. Because the only concern now, though, is that if this is Neilma on the RDO, I am a little worried about the Oni Warriors in terms of their capability for reinitiation. We see so many tools disposable here for the Jade Dragons. They just have non-stop CC that they can keep reapplying, but I'm not getting the same read from this Oni Warriors composition. This is a very high execution draft.
What does power scaling look like to you here? Because I see Heimdall for Vote, and I'm thinking we're going to try to fight to the late game, and Vote can kind of go off there towards the end. Maybe even Morgan Le Fay as well. Do you think this Oni Warriors team just has to survive?
Oni Warriors has to survive their early game. They need to be on top of their buff timers. Their mid game is their peak in my mind. Morgan Le Fay obviously going to be great for the late. Same thing for Heim, but Oni Warriors are going to have to be careful.
This one could be interesting. Jade Dragons versus Oni Warriors. Game number 1. It's Gormizer and Mifflin to take us in.
That's right, David, is me. And also Miff, hanging around for the Dragon. Hey, Miff.
Hey.
you look a little lost, man. You feeling good?
I was facing the wrong way, man. I'm here. What's up?
Yeah, so there's an Amus and Cobb in this game. I think you might have missed that part. That's popping.
No, you gave Dave the thumbs up, and he made a big spiel about it.
He was listening, y'all. He was paying attention to me. It's true love. You can feel it as of right now. This is an interesting draft to be coming through, and you could hear the desk talking about it. Have to survive the early game if they're the Warriors. Panda Cat is where my eyes immediately go to. Homeboy has picked up Tainted Steel.
Yep.
Has no technical escape in this game. What's his survivability like?
Well, Terra counter-engage with Earthern Fury. That's one bit of escape. At least you're going to get a burst heal whenever you take a consistent damage. And, well, gods like Surcat are going to proc that heal every single time they engage just by nature of how their kit works. Even Dardes with the third ability, the Fire, is also going to proc Earthen Fury. So Panda Cat should always be benefiting from that heal. And it's not just the Terra. It's also Yannis keeping him alive.
Well, right now he's taking a little bit of poke. You could see PBM, a great stun, not necessarily onto Neil, but onto Vote to make sure that that damage didn't follow up. Panda Cat's early levels might be the roughest on this team. Heimdall is going to have a much easier time, maybe just in general, but at least in the early game. We also have to turn our eyes maybe towards the solo lane. Finoke is incredibly low. A couple of minion hits, maybe a smack from Nika could find first blood, but Nika's going to be backing off the minion wave, favoring Finoke now. He's got a lot of mana, but not enough confidence to jump in on a Guan Yu.
Hey, it looks like Nika's taken that tweet from Neilma to heart. Just about 8 minutes ago, Neil tweets out that he's not really trying to play the game today, Core. He's just trying to watch an artist at work, and that artist happens to be Nika on the other side, but maybe it's Dardes putting the work. Sanford Soccer taking a ton of damage in mid. And I think Dardes is a great focal point for this Oni Warriors draft because generally he's their greatest piece in the late game. If they are forced to take this match to 20, 30-ish minutes, you're really relying on Dardes in particular to step up. And he's got decent matchups right now up against Sanford Soccer. That Dragonflight is always going to be a great peel tool. Almost invalidates the engage from Gilgamesh if he isn't kind of cognizant of it and pre-beads that knockup. And, well, up against PBM, got to get close. You got to use that dash in to close gap. Again, that knockup won't work against Terra, but is a ton of damage. You still have that fear to help you out. I think that Dardes is primed and ready to have a good match, especially considering how strong this front line is on the Oni Warriors. Cuvo likely going to go for a slightly bruiser build. Nika going to be very tanky. Neilma going to be very tanky. And Vote playing one of the most survivable hunters in the game means that you don't really have to worry about him. The rest of the boys can just peel about Dardes.
And Dardes has his own little bit of self-peel as well. That Morgan Le Fay didn't have a very successful last week, so we'll see if Dardes is able to help pick it up this week. You had mentioned Neil, specifically his tweets. Wasn't it Vote last week in an interview who had said Neil was like the enemy of the Warriors? Like their #1 enemy. We'll see if he plays like their enemy or their friend here, depending on how things shake out. A lot of opportunities for First Blood have kind of cropped their way through this game, but no one's yet been able to find it. Only 3 minutes in, though, so it's not necessarily hurting for it. Neil finds himself in a slightly awkward position. The Honey now picked up for Panda Cat, level 4, as he sticked over there. And this is actually an important question. Typically, junglers level 5, we start to talk about. Herwind is level 5 right now on his Giannis, by the way, which I somehow, my brain kind of filtered out until this moment. So that's going to be important. But I also want to know, I mean, Heimdall, we've seen how crucial that ult can be for setting up kills or confirming kills. What about the Stinger? I mean, Panda Cat, like, that's a good chunk of burst.
So here's the thing about the 1v1 between Panda Cat and Vote. It's pretty heavily favored towards this AMC. I mean, the Bifrost doesn't work. The Stinger is just a great cripple. I mean, you're going to slow him out consistently. AMC is going to have more mobility in the lane just by that additional movement speed from Hives. I think the Vote, when left alone, likely isn't going to look to fight just about ever as Cubo and Dardes attempt a little bit of an invade, but do not find much.
They walk over into the jungle. Sam even gets a stun onto Cubo, but Heroin wasn't having any of it, and it didn't seem like Dardes was really that into the fight either. They both back off and go their separate ways as they walk back, I believe, to split up some back camps. Neil Ma has been putting the pressure on in the duo lane. And again, the bounce back from a lot of these players, especially specifically on the Dragons, who have been incredibly low, flirting with death, and have been able to bounce right back to not only full health, but competing against their opponents have been really solid. Fine OK being one of those. 5 pairs of beads picked up right now for the Dragons. You had mentioned the CC being strong for the Warriors. I think that exemplifies that even more so. And we also just had the Oracle vision going over towards the Warriors. Little details, but a lot of it is slowly accruing on the Warriors' side. A small invade, I believe, earlier for Neil to get 2 of the small minions around a buff. It's 100 gold, if even, at this point, but the Warriors are really making sure that they're keeping the Dragons locked down for a little bit.
Gore, I want to highlight some of the micro tech we just saw put on display by PBM. There's actually an interaction now with Terra where if you dash through your second ability, the clap, while it's clapping, you get that proc, so you're dealing the damage of breaking the wall. It still does the stun, and you can set up your third ability there as well. I mean, he's bursting buffs from like 100 to 0 already on this Terra pick. And that means that your objective secure, looking pretty good. Your buff invade looks good as well. And Cubo Fred looks good with the juke shoes as he avoids certain death.
I was waiting, just patiently, right? Waiting with bated breath. Is Cubo going to die? Here's Hurry going to be able to do it. He hits that portal. It feels like a brilliant moment. And showcases, again, why you need to be worried about Heroin's Yanis. But luckily for Cubo, he had 1 cooldown available and just enough mobility to make sure he's not going to get hit by through space and time. The question is, will Heroin be able to get out of here? Neil Ma with a blink, and they just burn him down. Can't even get to a wall in time to get away from that. PBM left just to watch his mid laner die.
That's a tough one for Hurrywin, who doesn't have his beads anymore, so now he's looking at a deficit of 1 level up against Dardes, and it's pretty clear how quickly he can get burned out inside of these engagements. That was a blink in from Neilma, immediately into a fear from Dardes, and then Dragonflight did like 30% of his HP bar already. Hurrywin's got to keep his head on a swivel, man. If anyone's closing gap onto him, he's essentially dead up against this Morgan Le Fay.
And that is going to be, I think, the way these, at least early collisions happen. The Warriors can't risk too much. They get the first blood bounty. And they haven't been able to pivot into too heavily, again, a large lead, although getting this Greater Scorpion, opening themselves up to maybe some of these neutral objectives pretty soon is going to be the big conversation. Best way to win your late game is to get to your late game first, and now we're going to see if they can shut down Panda Cat. He doesn't have enough mobility still. Those hives give you some movement speed. He's slowed down. He uses the beads. It's 3 pairs of beads now down for the Dragons. But he keeps his life, so it's worthwhile.
Oni Warriors keeping the pressure up everywhere on the map right now. Again, you get to see that damage from PBM. It is crazy what you can do to buff. Super hard to execute on Cubo, though.
Fred, he's getting pushed out.
He's fine.
Sam looking
He's fine.
for the soul. He just jumped forward. He drops the Winds of Shamash, the ult, in return from Cubo. And it seems like Sam is going to maybe not walk out of this one alive. He has no mana. Dardes, Nika chasing him down. They're going to punish him for his insolence. He gets too deep in the jungle, and Dardes gets the kill.
Yeah, Sam was out there just trying to pick up his quest item. He meets Cubo and says, all right, well, I'm already here. I've been spotted out. And now Hurrywin in the same situation. Goodness gracious, man. The Oni Warriors keeping pressure up all over the map. This is tough now for the Jade Dragons, who really wanted to get aggressive in the early game. We've seen it through Sanford Soccer's play and positioning on the map. He is trying to get involved early on, but now looking at a 2-level deficit inside the jungle. This Jade Dragons draft, you got to think, likely getting outscaled come late game. They got to pick it up right now.
Yeah, that's the key, right? I mean, if you hit the late game fast as the Warriors, you're gonna be just fine coasting through the rest of it. There's still plenty of opportunities, though. No Fury has been taken. It is a little over 1,000 gold lead, though, Mifflin. 8.5 minutes in, and 3-0. They have been very carefully calculated picks. Maybe that Sam one was kind of a gift on a silver platter for him. Whirlwind has just been bullied anytime Neil decides to show up. If that blink is on cooldown, or off cooldown, I should say, it's going to, well, maybe result in Hurry either having to use his beads and run, or maybe just straight up dying. Some pings coming out specifically from the Warriors, I think recognizing that they can have an advantage around this red buff. Dardes walking around the corner and looking to get some poke onto Hurry. Buff does spawn in here. Neil opting to stay aggressive. PBM is in the neighborhood, so is Cuvo. This feels like if you overstay your welcome, it might end up hurting you more than helping you. Cuvo Freds made the rotation. Whirlwind, a lot of poke missed by Dardes, so his health bar remains full. Cuvo starts up the red buff, and they're grouping up to try and defend it. There's going to be the through space in time. They're going to try to kick this off. They're going through the portal. PBM wants to get aggressive and going for the cutoff path to catch up to Neil Ma. The peel from Nika, more than anyone, is enough to help make sure that the Dragons can't continue. FineOK joins the fray.
FineOK now in, looking for the Stygian Torment, finds Dardes, forces out the ultimate defensively just for the CC immunity, but that should spell the end of that engagement. Oni Warriors able to strip away that red buff, and Sanford Soccer finds a phenomenal wins a Shamash inside of that engagement. It is able to isolate Neil Ma, who didn't have his dashes available anymore. But because of this deficit, because Sam is playing from behind, he isn't able to stick in there. He isn't able to lock him down.
Poor Panda Cat right now. Isolated, no mana. He tries to return some damage, but there's not much you can do. The stun, the CC, and of course the kill there now for Vote. 4-0. It was almost balanced out there during that last engagement, but the Warriors, Mifflin, just keep getting kills. In fact, they almost wanted more. PBM, he only gets hit for a little bit, not much of his health bar. But still, the Warriors want to take these fights because they're winning them.
Yeah, it's honestly very interesting to see how the Warriors have addressed that concern that I brought up of the 1v1 between Panda Cat and Vote. Neilma says, all right, well, if you don't win it,
It just won't be a 1v1.
Yeah, it won't be a 1v1. I'll be there every single time. And so far, it's been panning out very well for the Oni Warriors, but 4-0, first blood going their way as well. You'd expect this gold lead to be a little bit higher than where it currently stands. And if the Jade Dragons are successful in taking this Pyromancer, there's no gold lead at all.
That is, I think, the biggest thing we've seen, and actually something to focus on lately. We have seen a lot of this. Specifically, I know the Scarabs, the Valkyries are another team that has done it. The Warriors right now are in this position where you get a couple of kills and you get a small lead, but something that is relatively easy to bounce back from, as seen by the Pyromancer. The Gold Fury, however, going to do a even better job of bouncing back from a Pyromancer not going their way, pretty much making things maybe go net neutral. PBM's walking in towards it. He's got the damage. Can he get the secure? They're focusing on him, but there's the through space in time. PBM down, and that's going to be the shot. Panda Cat with the kill onto the Fury is going to walk away with his life as of right now. The Dragons get the Pyro, and now they're re-aggressing. It was the crushing earth there from PBM to secure it, and they get a kill onto Neil Ma as well. Now the Dragons are looking hot.
Man, that is such clean play from PBM, walking up and says, all right, well, you already used all your CC. You think Dardes is going to knock me away? I'm Terra, bud. I am stuck inside of it. Uses the 2 to finish off the Gold Fury itself and out-confirms everyone on the side of the Oni Warriors. That cannot happen. PBM gets the full value of his life and then some.
More specifically, I'd have to watch it, and we have the replay here, because this was new Terra Tech. When you die, you can reactivate the walls. I think that's what happened. PBM went down incredibly fast, so the walls are still up. Let's watch when he dies, because I believe, no, it was
just
right
before
as he died. So, hey, still looks really good being able to get the kill right as you go down. What a steal. And with that Pyromancer, Mifflin, they're now in the lead.
Yeah, 1-5 and in the lead. Experience, though, should still be favoring the Oni Warriors in certain part. Oh, no, maybe not. You're right. No, XP starting to lean back more so towards even. There's leads elsewhere on the map. It's kind of a split map insofar as experience, but gold now for the first time this game favoring the Order side team. And, well, we were saying that they do have the superior early game. They are looking to kind of get aggressive here. They haven't fully done so. 1,000 gold 13 minutes in isn't as valuable as it could have been 5-6 minutes ago had the Jade Dragons had a faster start, but it's certainly a place to get started. It's certainly a place to root your aggression, and now with both neutral objectives removed, Pyromancer and Gold Fury, the Jade Dragons can choose wherever they want on the map to focus and try and find something to push this lead even further.
Well, if I'm looking at something, I'm either looking at Vote, who's 2-0, or Dardes, who's 2-0, but also with 2 assists to tack onto that one. Maybe try to get specifically Panda Cat back into the fray, but also to make Herwind level out a little bit more. Both of them level 13s to 14 respectively on the other side, and so some work to be done to make sure they stay in this. That being said, I will throw out that Herwind has been doing pretty decent in terms of damage. I mean, he's been throwing out the ult exactly when and where his team needs it. Maybe kind of reminding us why usually it has to be banned against him, even if it's not necessarily in the meta anymore.
Yeah, just he's trying to remind people that, you know, he can play gods that aren't just Morgan Le Fay. He's not just looking for the Tiamat. Instead, he does have that Yanis in the back pocket. And with just 2 weeks left until the playoffs, maybe wants to force that respect band back into people's minds. So I like this from the Jade Dragons, just reminding them, okay, well, we've got some comfort picks here that you have to respect. But so far, the Oni Warriors have responded very well to this Yanis pick. I mean, he's 0-2. How often could you have said that in the early game for Hurry wins Yanis just last phase? Just about never. And now he loses out on his beads as well. The Oni Warriors are putting so much pressure onto this guy that really Cubo Fred can just rotate through now and likely find the solo kill.
And earlier it was usually Relic for Relic, Blink on Neil for beads from Hurry. Granted, it also resulted in quite a few kills doing that as well. And this time around, it's just straight up picking it up. I mean, Neil still has that engage tool. He's hit level 12 as well, so he's going to be able to pick up a second Relic. Blink was the option for PBM. So maybe Neil gets, maybe he gets some CC immunity in the beads. The taunt's just wide there from Cuvo.
Poor guy.
But forces the ult out of Herwind, forces him to fall back that way. That's 2 huge utilities down for the Giannis.
Yeah, he's got no CC immunity left to him, and Cubo Fred committed just about nothing to force that out. Walks up, presses 2, and Hurry wins.
And misses his 2.
Misses the 2. Yeah, he doesn't even commit the damage to it as PBM takes a little bit from Dardes in mid. I think now, I mean, Hurrywin is essentially a moot point. He is not effective in the team fight for about 50 or so seconds until that ultimate becomes available again. And just until then, he's a sitting duck. He's a free kill, and the Oni Warriors, realizing that, put a ton of pressure on the map. Again, this tier 1 tower falls down early, 16 minutes in, and that's huge considering what's happening in the map state. Pyromancer spawning very soon. Primal Fury spawning very soon. If you start to lose a team fight, where do you generally run? It's that tier 1 tower in mid. The Jade Dragons no longer have that bastion of safety.
A lot of their, like you said, safety stripped away from them. And for a second there, it looked like the Pyromancer was going to be the target for the Dragons. They put a deep ward. You can see where PBM just threw that over on the right-hand side of the map, whereas Vision, I would argue, for the left-hand side is immeasurably in favor of the Warriors, but it is the grouping from the Dragons starting up the Pyro. A couple of pings just a second ago from the Warriors. Neil will be able to see that this is going on. Can he do anything about it? PBM style for this one. Hovering around, walks forward. Dragons secure it thanks to the Giannis. Dardes is right here, gets some damage. They're not going to take the fight.
Man, we just got a little look at how much Dardes is swinging for, and it's a fair deal, man. I mean, I know PBM doesn't have the most magic defense, has allotted to go a little bit more physical heavy in the defense with the Lotus Crown, but Dardes doing 30% with poke from that kind of range, kind of ridiculous. Means that given any bit of space, he's going to shift up these fights.
Well, lose a mid tier 1 and get some pressure on the red buff. Cuvo Neil getting chased down by 5 full members of the Dragons. They're hovering around this Primal Fury. Portal through space and time thrown out. And so once again, a huge ult used by the Dragons. Now that Primal Fury is started up by the Warriors, and it seems like the Dragons are more than content to let this go their way. No one contesting it, everyone falling back. PBM just straight up went to the base. So that's going to go objective for objective. Warriors still slightly, ever so slightly, ahead in gold.
Yeah, with through space and time down, I just don't think there's much that Jade Dragons can do about that one. That's their best steal potential. It's their disengage. It's their engage. And having used it earlier on to defend the red buff and not really getting a ton of value, I think they make the right decision in letting that Primal Fury fall. And
it's been a lot of, let's just call them unflashy plays. Like, I mean, even right there, like you get a tower, it's a 2v2. Oh, they're facing up there. There's no big damage. Nobody's in threat, and nobody's trying to kill anyone anymore. It feels like they're waiting for those opportunities to rise. The Warriors lead 18 minutes in, 5-1. A lot of those 5 were I would argue, what, 10 minutes? For 11 minutes at least. And so slowed down for the Warriors in terms of where they're finding their picks. The Dragons got one really good fight, good couple of objectives. And since then, haven't been able to do much, like you have highlighted, through space and time has been down for a lot of these maybe crucial team fights. Instead, back up, clear the buffs, lose another tier 1 in left, and try to bolster up. Still not a huge gold lead for the Warriors, even getting that tower. I mean, tier 1s are only 500, so it's not necessarily the end of the world. But they're losing those safe havens.
They are, and when you have a pace like this, you have to evaluate which team is happier with it. I think you have to say that it's the Oni Warriors this time around. Dardes scales incredibly well into the late game. Neilma is one of the most impactful Guardians right now. I would argue that Bach is likely the best late game Guardian just because of how much defense he has, and it's Cubo Fred getting aggressive hurry when forced to use the beats again, but that should spell the end of this engagement. And Cubo Fred inside of that engagement shows exactly what I'm worried about for the late game of the Jade Dragons. If he's able to close gap onto Hurrywind or a mobile hunter like AMC, I mean, Circuit's 1v1 is some of the best 1v1s from an assassin in the game right now. I think that the Oni Warriors have just got a very good draft in late game 5-on-5 team fights to deal with what the Jade Dragons are bringing.
And we've only been able to see it a couple of times here, but Nika, and you have to factor in the healing that he's going to be bringing to the equation. Granted, there's a little bit of anti-heal out there for Fine OK, just built into the kit, and a little bit of anti-heal being bought up, but that is going to be a very different fight when Nika actually gets to participate. A lot of the ones that we've seen the solo laners rotate to haven't exploded the way we expected. Even that 5-on-5 grouping right before the Primal Fury didn't get to blow up the way that I at least was expecting. And so we're looking for, what, a little under 2.5 minutes for a Pyromancer to come back up. Fire Giants on the board. And with the grouping from the Warriors, it's starting to feel like they might want a little bit more. But Cubo maybe caught out, going to be stunned by PBM. And that is a lot of damage to deal to the jungler, but it's going to be a long rotation from the rest of the Dragons. With Cubo out of this fight, the Dragons are going to be able to take the defensive positioning.
Man, look at all these wards on the map. Sure, the Dragons get the defensive positioning, but the Warriors have complete information control, right? They have got so many wards down and now headed back to base, picking up more sentries.
Well, they have that Draugr buff on this tower, maybe helping them defend a tier 1, or choose to try and defend the tier 1. Dardes clone walks forward. Not something you get to see too often with the Morgan. That caught me, or Morgan specifically, not Morgan. That one's going to be difficult.
Yeah, we call her LaFay, man. Just do the second half, and you don't have to like run through that at all. It's like Morgan, or just LaFay, you know?
Yeah, but like the Morgan's not in this game, so Morgan throws out her clone. That's something I think you actually at one point, I don't know if this might be paraphrasing too heavily, borderline useless? Is that something you had said about it?
I think that it is. You're only ever using the clone to get your passive stacked up. That's all you want. So you're getting the full runic mastery on your ultimate. That's all you're looking for from it. You don't generally use it for anything else. I mean, the fear is legitimately one of the best.
It's a fear. It's just a good CC. Good.
It's just straight up good. Or a slow field that's like the size of one of these little small jungle pass. Or do you want like a clone that gets 2-shot? I think I'll take one of the other two, unless I'm stacking up my passive. Then, on Morgan LaFay, you got to go for that decoy, just to get the full value from your ultimate.
Well, we'll see if he can get the full value out of it. We already mentioned the damage being nuts. He's top player damage, only by 100. Actually, quite literally, was 100 player damage ahead of Fine OK, which is not something that you get to see too often, the perfect hundo. But it's slowed. I mean, they haven't had a reason to expand that number. I mean, the Warriors are loving this pace. They've got most of the last neutral objectives. Pyromancer is back. Oni Fury is going to spawn in a little bit. And you were talking about Vision a second ago. Still in favor of the Warriors on the right-hand side. Starting to favor the Dragons on the left. And we're really starting to hit the late game. Level 20 for both the Hunters, the Mids, and the Solo Laners. 18 for both Junglers, 15 for both supports. It's about as even as you can get. 22.5 minutes in. And the fight looks like it wants to burst out here around the Fury. A couple of good shots. PBM maybe a little bit too deep, but it's just a lot of back and forth in the fight.
Yeah, they're just trading out, trying to get the Oracles. Oni Warriors actually pick up both Oracles, so Vision going to favor them
difficult
on the Oni Fury. Yeah, especially considering how contested it was right there. But I think that Neilma falling so low is pretty impactful, is forced to go back to base. So the Jade Dragons, utilizing that sustain from Terra, are able to stick around. If they realize that Neilma made his way back, might be able to look for a little bit of an engagement here, but instead fizzles. This is a high concept game of Smite right here. These guys are fighting over vision. They're fighting over micro positioning. They're fighting over who gets a step 10 units forward around these neutral objectives. It almost feels like a chess match right now, and it's reflected in the slash lines. These guys aren't run and gunning. They're playing like tactical shooters out here in the Smite battlegrounds, and so far it's been the Oni Warriors getting the better end of the majority of these neutral objective trades, but it's the Jade Dragons who find themselves barely in the lead.
That 600 gold can mean just enough.
There's a couple
as
wards
of right now.
6 wards.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, like, yeah, for dewarding purposes, that actually is going to be very helpful. Look at the sentries that are being thrown down. Deep sentries there from FineOK to try and catch out some vision from the Warriors. Speaking of FineOK, he's going to be able to grab one. Neilma gets pulled back, taken to half health, but it's not going to be enough to find the kill. Cubo does exactly what you highlighted earlier, gets to the background and helps Dardes get the kill. They lose Neil, but they kill Hurry, they kill Sam, and they might just kill FineOK. He's half health, and it looks like he'll be able to run away, even chase him down just a little bit. No neutral objective, but a clean 2-for-1.
Man, Cubo Fred plays so patiently in that engagement. The very second that the Jade Dragons start that fight, it's FineOK pulling in Neilma. He says, oh, cool, that means that Hurrywin's probably distracted at least a little bit, dives into the back line, and immediately shuts him down. Hurrywin realizes that he's dead to the poison, was going to use that ultimate to escape, turns on a dime, tries to return the damage into the backline of the Oni Warriors, unfortunately does not find a priority target for him, and the fight from there is all Warriors all the way down, and now the Gold Fury seems to be the exact same thing.
Doesn't seem like PBM's going to be able to work that magic 2 times in one game.
Imagine,
Warriors
though.
get themselves the Oni Fury. I think they were zoning for it. They were waiting for the Terra to try and walk up. Piercing sight there from specifically the Heimdall secures it, but Oni minion waves now coming down the lanes. Makes me think with Pyromancer up, Fire Giant up, the Warriors should make a pretty hefty pivot to the right-hand side of the map, especially look at the waves on left. They're more than fine to get on over here and put some pressure onto the FG pit.
Yeah, but the Jade Dragons do have a bit of a cheeky ward on the Fire Giant, actually. Isn't spotted out by the Sentry as it's blocked by that wall, so when the Oni Warriors do decide to group up on this neutral objective, the Dragons will know. They don't have HP bar, they don't see the Pyromancer's HP bar, but they will know when the Oni Warriors show up, and this tight grouping already. Dardes showing himself here.
Ping,
essentially just lets the Dragons know, all right, this is real. They're actually going for it. So we get to see what the response is. Hurrywin on the opposite side of the map might have to dedicate the ultimate to engage himself. Instead, slow play. The Dragons say, it's got to be the Pyro. They're not on the Giant itself. We don't have to worry just yet. Regroup and don't have to use any of their utility to close gap.
The glory of having your Hunter over here so early and so cleanly, especially since he's got a Titan's Bane on there as well. It picked up the Titan's Bane prior to the chin size for vote. Burn down the Pyromancer, no problem. Looks like that might be the route that we see, specifically Panda Cat going into match. Fire Giant is dealing damage. It's taking a little bit, but it seems like this is the
How did
bait
Fred get here?
as they wait just a little bit. Fred, yeah, just deep in the back line, waiting for that through line to get to Hurrywin, and he's going to take it. He dashes forward, but he grabs FineOK this time around, and that's going to be the kill onto the solo laner. Up-down from Sam just results in his own death, and it's a 2-for-none right now. Very low from Neil, low from Cubo, low on the Warriors, but they get exactly what they want.
Legitimately, if Fred isn't standing exactly where he's standing, I don't think that fight goes the way of the Oni Warriors whatsoever. The Dragons had essentially set up an ambush behind that wall. Panda Cat forced to use all of his abilities just trying to stop Fred, but that taunt from the Surcats forces FineOK to walk straight head first into the entirety of the Oni Warriors as he's trying to rejoin Sanford Soccer, who is amidst his dive, and that immediately turns into a clean fight. And this late in the game, you're dead for a long time. I mean, 20 seconds left on Sanford Soccer, 15 seconds left on FineOK. Jade Dragons put in a position where they can't defend the Fire Giant. The question isn't even posed, do you want to? It's not an option. Oni Warriors, they're playing so clean right now, and as a reward for it, 5 members are going to have Fire Giant on their belts.
Yeah, they get 5 FGs. I like this from the Dragons, though. Get the Dragger buff. It's not a ton, but it's still something to help slow down. A Fire Giant buff, you now have well, defense-enhanced towers didn't help the Tier 1 too much. But maybe these Tier 2s, typically that's in my mind the equalizing, right? Like, oh man, now all of a sudden, we couldn't have defended a Tier 2 before. Maybe if we group as 5, we can push them back. It's not going to be necessary on the right-hand side just yet. The Warriors are going to back and spend some of the gold they got from these last couple of fights. You had mentioned it. I mean, still look at the wards. That is insanely deep coverage from the Warriors. Not a place you can stand on the right-hand side as the Dragons and not be seen.
And look at the wards in pocket, by the way. These guys all probably already have 2 on the map, and they're like, all right, just in case we have to fight over some neutral territory again, let's all 5 of us have neutral, or sentry wards rather, and the Oni Warriors is going to benefit from that greatly. It's been their game plan this entire time. Wow, I didn't actually look over their gourd. There's like 6 sentries on the Fire Giant pit. Yeah. If war is a battle of information, the Oni Warriors are winning it handily right now. But as you highlighted, the Jade Dragons are afforded the opportunity to decide whether or not they want to defend these Tier 2 towers. And with the grouping that we're seeing right now, it's pretty clear what the decision is. We're not stepping up. Phoenix is or bust. And I think that's the right call considering Hurricane on this Yanis, and this is a conversation we haven't had to have in a long time, struggles on defense. It's an unorthodox mage. Your abilities aren't nearly as AoE as some of these other guys. You're not putting out that consistent CC that Dardes is. It means that it's likely coming down to a snipe from Hurricane as the majority of his contribution, or just repositioning your team with that ultimate if you're already winning in the fight. You can chase him out very well, but he's not the best on defense.
Well, Neil wants to get aggressive right now. He blinks forward. He's not going to be able to find a ton. PBM's getting aggressive on the left-hand lane, and Dardes is taking a lot more damage than I think he bargained for. My eyes, Mifflin, are going to be trained mostly, well, mine are on the minimap, but everybody else's should be trained on Cuvo Fred, because he has been the key. A lot of these last few fights, you had highlighted it, the Dragons probably win them if it weren't for Cuvo being in the right position, the right time, whether it's a taunt that forces someone to fall back or his through line to Hurricane. He's a huge deal.
And in that micro skirmish, both mid laners forced to use their beads. Cuvo Fred seems to be going for the split push, forcing Sanford Soccer to stick around inside of that 1v1, and Winds of Shamash being one of their best AoE tools on the side of the Jade Dragons. That's a pretty big commitment to stop just one guy from pushing, and one guy also stealing your speed buff. Cuvo Fred able to pick that one up pretty easily, giggling jungler style. But Oni Warriors seem to be pretty happy with what they've acquired so far. A couple Tier 1s, some Tier 2s, and now the Primal Fury as well. Still a full minute to play with on this Fire Giant, but you gotta think they're headed back to base to spend all that gold. That's probably another 20 seconds lost. This Fire Giant push is essentially over. Maybe we see them group up on this Tier 2 on the right-hand side as they're on tour waiting for this Fire Giant to respawn, but the Jade Dragons maintain their base 30 minutes in.
Well, that Pyromancer's about to respawn. Sam might actually catch that right on time. Hurries over here. They might be able to sneak it just in time to stop the Warriors from getting it, because that's exactly what my mindset was, well, if you can't get the Tier 2 before the Fire Giant falls, and you can't get it maybe afterward, depending on the positioning of the Dragons, well, a Consolation Pyromancer doesn't really hurt.
Yeah,
You're about 9,000 gold up.
Well, golds is the plural of gold,
that is a
right?
plural. Yeah, there's multiple. Well, is it? I think it's just gold.
Well, I mean, it depends. Are you
There's
talking
like,
about
hey,
elemental
here's 5
gold?
gold, or I'll give you a single gold. I think it's just gold and gold.
Yeah, but the plural of heat is heats.
Okay. I'll accept it, because I don't know whether or not you're true. 9,000 gold up, 31 and a half minutes in now, as we determine whether or not gold and golds match up. It's approaching pretty quickly 10,000 gold. If they get the Pyromancer, Warriors will be able to break that. PBM a little deep. FineOK goes in aggressive as well as the through space and time. They want to make this one pop, and they want to make it pop now, but they're not getting any damage. There's no follow-up, Mifflin. The Warriors are more than okay right now. Cuvo gets away. That's 2 heavy ults invested from the Dragons, and nothing found on the other side.
Silver lining, the Fire Giant isn't alive yet, so hopefully the Jade Dragons with this pretty heavy CDR build for Hurricane will have that ultimate back available. The PBM, maybe not so lucky. Fire Giant should be barreling to the earth very soon here, and Earthern Fury might be one of the most important cooldowns for the Jade Dragons. Oni Warriors survived by the skin of their teeth. Had that ultimate from Hurricane found pay dirt, had it hit anyone on the side of the Oni Warriors, that engagement likely goes the way of the Jade Dragons just because of how much space and how much separation PBM was able to create there, but instead hits nothing, and the Oni Warriors, well, you can see it on the map. They're healthy. They're feeling fine.
And a beefy
Kivo's doing it
minion
again.
wave over there on the left. Hey, this looks familiar. This
a
exact
ward down.
positioning. This time they see him. Oh, at least a little bit, but can they kill him? Can they thwart him? They see it. Look, there's 3 wards where Cuvo is hanging out. They know he's looking to make the rope around, but it's the Fire Giant that is the prime target. Half health through space and time. Comes back up. Through space and time. Goes right through every member, but they're getting a lot of damage onto Vote. He's going to fall back. Sam eats his health bar for the trouble. The poison is ticking. The poison is enough. Cuvo Fred gets the kill onto the jungler. Fine, okay. Goes deep into the backline, but it's Vote who uses the Bifrost to chase him down, throws out an auto, tells him to get on out of here, and they're going to look once again towards the FG. There's a lot of low health bars.
Enhanced Fire Giant this time around, and as you highlighted, Dardes is not feeling good, but Cuvo Fred catches Hurrywin out in the jungle, costs him 80% of his HP bar, and costs the Jade Dragons their mid laner if they want any hopes of defending this Fire Giant. It seems to be that they're willing to let this one go yet again. Oni Warriors, 10,000, maybe closer to 12,000 gold up. Enhanced Fire Giant on 5 members. Left Phoenix already takes a little bit of damage from the wave, so they've got cleared targets to expose this Titan. Oni Warriors are looking very good right now.
12,000 gold, 2 Phoenixes, as you had highlighted, exposed. 34 minutes. It only took them a little bit after the last update to get things together. Cuvo Fred has damn near no mana as of right now, but it's not going to stop him from going in. He grabs Fine Okay and just throws him back to get him out of the way. They get the Phoenix, and they get on out of there. They still have 3.5 minutes to play with.
Gore, these ultimates from Hurrywin, they feel rushed. They feel like he's just throwing them out and hoping something sticks to the wall, and it's not really what we're used to seeing from him. Normally it's, okay, Sam, go in there, give me a drop kick, and I'll snipe him from literally anywhere on the map. Doesn't matter. As long as there is a stun, I'm going to hit him. Or PBM, walk up and hit him with a clap, and I'll hit him. But instead, it's been Hurrywin going for these raw ultimate plays, just waiting for really nothing, and well, he hasn't really found much value off of it. That said, when you're throwing wild haymakers at every given opportunity, eventually one of those punches will likely hit your chin, and those are knockout punches. That's the threat that Hurrywin is generating right now. If he lands an ultimate onto Cuvo Fred, if he hits Dardes, I mean, Dardes might just straight up die, considering we've got a Soul Reaver in the build, a Soul Gem as well. If Hurrywin's able to proc all those passives, I'm not sure that the Morgan Le Fay survives that, but I gotta think that just wait for a little bit of CC, get the guaranteed shot, and then you're dealing with so much more damage. You're getting the fight started off so much better, but the Jade Dragons are playing a little impatient right now.
And, you know, it's something that is hurting them. The Warriors have had the utmost patience. I mean, they have been very calm, very collected in a lot of these fights. Even right now, yes, oh man, they've only got 2 minutes left. What are they going to do with the rest of this Fire Giant? Well, they're getting an Oni Fury. They've got Fire Minions in mid, so that's an Oni Fire Wave. The Dragons are all grouped up in their base as of right now. Expecting and anticipating this left-hand side push is what it looks like to me. Otherwise, making some very bizarre plan that I'm not privy to. I feel like it's more the former, setting up for the defense. And now you've got the beads available for Dardes. It was about 30 seconds out, about 30 seconds ago. Now he's going to be getting the Aegis back up. So everybody's feeling the safety in the game. Relics at a neutral state, ults at a neutral state, and into the left Phoenix the Warriors go.
And look at that. Vote pops the Elixir of Power. If he's given any opportunity to touch the Phoenix, I'm pretty sure that was one auto attack from the Heimdall that drops this Phoenix to like just around 80% HP. The Jade Dragons have to keep him out.
Well, Neil gets aggressive, goes for the blink. There is going to be the Curse Dog as well. They're taking down the healing, but Dardes is the one who's low. One more hit is all it'll take. PBM is able to get there, and now they are falling, dropping like flies. 3 members gone, make it 4. The turnaround from the Dragons, the re-engage around their Phoenix leaves only Cuvo Fred alive. Fire Minions, Oni Fire Minions still threatening right here in mid. And you can see Sam looking to take care of it, looking to take care a little bit more as he's chasing down Cuvo. Hurrywin's here. And they're still trying, maybe too hard for this kill. The rest of the team is starting to onslaught down the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really need all the boys there. As long as your late game AMC is around, he should be able to clear out these towers pretty easily. And that's the haymaker, man. That's what Hurrywin's been looking for this entire time. It's through space and time, clips Dardes, doesn't kill him, does drop him down to 2% HP.
20 seconds.
Yeah, this late in the game, you keep throwing haymakers, eventually you're going to find that knockout punch. I think the Dragons might even go for the win here.
I mean, low health bars, the Phoenix is their
No way,
target.
they can't.
Yeah, it's taken a little
No
bit
way.
too long. 5 seconds before Dardes is back, and that's pretty much the timer on all of the Warriors. Cuvo is not enough to save this Phoenix. Now, fire minions for fire minions, but one's way closer to respawn. Speaking of respawn, Fire Giant, a little over a minute before that comes back, maybe a little under a minute now. With Pyromancer hanging out over there, the Warriors needing a desperate bounce back. That one, like you said, is enough to really make your vision a little bit blurry.
Yeah, that's a tough loss to eat. I mean, you've been playing clinically, I'd almost argue perfectly, for the last 38 minutes, and then Dardes says, "Oh, guys, Hurricane hit me for the first time, and he hits hard. Why'd you hit me so hard?" Drops down, immediately loses his life. Cuvo Fred almost gets the return kill on a Hurricane, but with 4 of your teammates dead already, it's not a ton of value that you would have found there. And now the Jade Dragons find themselves, for the first time this game, really in position to defend a Fire Giant. I mean, Fire Minion Wave is going to be favoring the Jade Dragons. Sure, gold is still largely in favor of the Oni Warriors, but 38 minutes in, gold is irrelevant, really.
I mean, look at the builds.
Yeah, they're all full. We're talking elixirs and wards. That's really the only separators. I mean, relics completed for just about everyone. Polar Bear Mike still not upgrading those beads. Neither has Sanford Soccer, but besides that, generally everyone at full strength here. Oni Warriors fans, you gotta still feel good about yourself though, because keep in mind in this last 40 minutes they haven't really lost a team fight, sans the very last one we just saw. So you got to think in this neutral territory they're still feeling confident enough to force this enhanced fire.
I would argue maybe a lot of pressure falling onto Hurricane. Hey, this is what happens when you play
hit
the
him,
god that
hit
we
him.
expect. And so if you're able to do it again, man, it's game over. You win, and we're moving to game number 2. You lose. Well, it's also game over, but that is.
And we're still going to game number 2.
Things are going. Yeah, no matter what, it's game number 2. Wow, it's funny how that works in the very first of a best of 3. This 10,000 gold, though, as you had highlighted, maybe a little bit more negligible. The only thing I think on the map, outside of Fire Giant and Pyromancer, that matter the most in my eyes are these tier 2 towers still standing for the Warriors. We're at this point in the game where maybe that little bit of health that the Titan's going to have can make a difference for them. We'll have to see if they are able to keep those standing. If the Dragons even opt, I mean, honestly, at this point, you also deal so much damage that doesn't matter unless they're defending it. It can only be the difference of microseconds, or maybe just a few seconds, ultimately, with 1 or 2 members and a very solid defense.
Keep your eyes on Cuvo Fred, Gora. I mean, he can't keep getting away with
sneaky.
this. He just keeps walking into the back line, and now trying to keep those fire minion waves pushed up does pull the attention of Sanford Soccer towards mid. And Sam says, look, man, you could clear the fire waves. I don't really care, but I'm going to make you work for it. I'm going to make you have to lose a little bit of HP in exchange, lose a little bit of that positioning advantage. And so far, the Jade Dragons are playing very reactive around this Fire Giant. They're waiting for the Oni Warriors, rather, to make the aggressive play. And the Warriors, they look a little shook, don't they? Maybe that their brain rattling from those haymakers. They don't want to commit to this. Instead, they're waiting for their opportunity to find that pick, find some sort of opening, and then push for the win. Both teams kind of spinning their wheels here. It's a dance of the objective. Wards heavily favoring Oni Warriors around the Fire Giant pit itself, but not deep enough that the Jade Dragons are really being revealed. I mean, there's not a lot of information deep on the Jade Dragon side of the map. If the Oni Warriors want to find the confidence that they need to pull this, they're going to have to find some deeper wards.
Now, the re-engage from the Dragons has been what's been deadly, and I'm not worried about them walking into the Fire Giant pit and starting things up. I'm worried about what happens when the Warriors decide to try and do exactly that, or if they decide to start a fight. You had mentioned Cuvo Fred. A lot of these deep wards last time caught him out on his rotations. Right now he's hanging out in mid, the best ward you can have, the minions, showcasing where his positioning is going to be. And again, damage is high at this point. Fire Giant going to be baited out by the Dragons this time around. And they're going to get a decent chunk of damage on it, trying to get the Warriors to take the bite. But nobody does. In fact, the Warriors are playing more cautiously than ever. Cuvo is backing.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors, they realize that it's not a whole lot of threat that the Dragons are generating right now. Cuvo Fred does actually go back to base, so this is an opportunity for the Dragons to force this engagement, and it's fine, okay, in first.
And he's going to go in.
He did it again!
Beads, he uses his ult, and there is Dardes with no help left. Sanford Soccer jumps into the back line with the help of Hurricane, finds the kill onto the mid laner. Neil Ma is getting chased down. One more hit is all it takes. Panda Cat, credit for that kill, and now the onslaught begins. begins. The Dragons, they only had to hit 2 massive punches this game, and it took them 40 minutes to get to this point, but there's still 3 members defending. They're on the right side, Phoenix. They're pushing forward, but it's not falling nearly fast enough. They have no Fire Giant, and they get the kill on the Bird, and they look towards mid.
Fire Minion Wave just on the door of the Phoenix here. Mid Phoenix likely going to fall down very quickly, and we still have 40 seconds left on both Neil and Dardes. Give Hurrywin 40 tries with his ultimate. He only needs 2. The Jade Dragons moving in.
The minions are here, so are all the Dragons. Vote is already half HP and pushed out. In fact, Huvo doesn't have any life to work with. He is forced into the fountain. The Titan is falling fast. Nika doing everything in his power. Vote's able to get a kill onto Sam, but it's not enough to turn this one around. 38 minutes of control, and they still got dunked on by the Dragons. Hurrowwind smacked him hard.
Yeah, get jammed. Just get jammed, right?
I think that is the most jammed.
Yeah, Hurrywin's like,
that
get jammed.
hurts.
Yeah, that's a tough one because the Oni Warriors were playing so well up until those last couple team fights, and I'd argue still playing well. I mean, are you predicting a cross-the-map snipe on a Dardes 2 times in a row? And the fact that it was Dardes both times, to me, proves that's exactly what the plan was for the Jade Dragons. They said, Hurrywin, if you can hit Dardes, we win the team fight. They do it twice. They win the team fight twice. That is crazy, the mental that the Jade Dragons have to have, losing for 35 minutes straight just to win 2 team fights in the game off the back of it. Dude, I'm pumped. Get us into game 2. Got pumped.
They were down in kills. They were down 12,000 gold at one point, as highlighted by Mifflin. They only needed 2 big fights to turn that one around. 1 at the left side, Phoenix, 1 at the FG. Dragons win game number 1. We'll break it down and move to game number 2 right after this.
What's up, Smite fans? Dolson here, and if you haven't already, you want to make sure you're checking out twitch.tv/SmiteGame on Mondays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, because we are doing the team content days where we bring in one of your favorite SPL teams, we sit down and do all sorts of crazy content with them. We've got Emotion.
Let's go!
We've got Mifflin throwing himself at the green screen. We've got plenty of actual informative content around all of your favorite Smite players and teams themselves.
Okay. In my defense. Hold on, let me think of a defense first.
So make sure you tune in on Mondays from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time to twitch.tv/SmiteGame. And hey, don't worry, if you can't catch it there, you can't catch it live, make sure to go to youtube.com/SmitePro to catch the VODs after the fact. It's a whole lot of fun. You don't want to miss it because, hey, you never know what's going to happen.
Yep, that's, chat, you just got to know who's daddy. That's just how it be, man.
The cereal kids are crazy for, Cthulhu's. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity, crazy crunchity, crazy
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y, Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. Abandon all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Favorite commercials I've ever filmed because I got to eat or try to eat a couple bowls of Fruit Loops there. I mean Cthulhoops. But all of that leads up to the fact that there's a big old gem sale going on right now. Started today and goes on until September 6th. The Cthulhoops gem sale. So if your eyes are on any skins or anything like that, chests in game, now's the best time of year to get in, buy some of those gem bundles because they're going on at a bit of a discount, at least for the next couple of weeks. It's today until September 6th, the Cthulhoops gem sale. The time is now to get in. You will not, oh God, what was it? You will not disobey or something like that. Reality is meaningless. Time's a construct. Eat your Cthulhoops, so on and so forth. Buy gems, buy a Maxonomic chair. Taco's with me, hopefully, to break me out of whatever headspace Cthulhu just got me in there, and we can break down game 1 a bit.
I understand where the brainwashing comes into play. The only disclaimer alert I have is the same one that I always say when it comes to gem sales: look good, feel good, play good. It is important. It's a
and that is a proven
theory.
fact.
Yes.
It is a proven thing, and that's why we always like to talk to our pros about what their favorite skins are, because some are just better performing than others, right? And that's also important. And
I hear they love a lot of those Scylla skins that are out there.
Yeah, right. That's right. Good thinking. And if you want some of those Scylla skins, the gem sale going on. But we will break down game number 1 here, a game that was 95% controlled by the Oni Warriors, it seemed like. And Taco, you set it up pretty well there. The power curve kind of hit perfectly for the Oni Warriors. They're on the verge of winning the game, and then they didn't because the Jade Dragons comp just did a little bit better in the late.
The sieges around the Phoenixes, I think, are where we saw a little bit more of that struggle, largely because when you're trying to deal with the Cerberus, when you're trying to deal with the Terra, there are just so many strong counter-initiation factors here. And, I mean, again, I have to reference Nika from that interview that we had before this set even took place. Jade Dragons, they're a team where you give the slightest slip-up, and they just punish you for it. Granted, Jade Dragons not exactly punishing the Oni Warriors throughout the entirety of this game after that Gold Fury steal from Polar Bear Mike, but on that same note, it was really just these Giannis snipes, and then on top of that, there's no real escape once you approach this super late game aspect, because gold, experience leads, all of that goes right out the window. Everybody's all caught up, everybody's level 20, everybody's full build, so at that point, you're just praying that you don't get waxed by a through space in time, and unfortunately for Dardes, he just wasn't able to stand strong.
I mean, the mid replay in this replay package was at 36 minutes. The Oni Warriors have like a 15,000 gold lead in there, fire gianted up, sieging the Phoenix of the Jade Dragons. And after that fight is when you and I verbally were talking in the green room and said, the Jade Dragons are going to win this game, because that fight didn't feel all that convincing. Big damage numbers from Dardes here in this game, 28,000 top in the game. Hurriwin's 12,000 damage probably came like 90% from his snipes there in that game, and sometimes that's all it takes to win one of those matchups. And I think this is a scary thing about this Dragons team, and it's definitely something we've talked about before, where sure they can roll you in the early game, but they're so much more diverse than that in their win avenues, right? They don't need to roll you in the early game to win every single game. They can win a game like this, where they delay things out and they just win in the late.
The adjustments that I would probably like to see from the Oni Warriors, and there's not many, because quite frankly, again, they really did play the early game properly. I think they, aside from that, little spillage with the Gold Fury, but even then, Oni Warriors had a great recovery. They re-siege control of the map pressure. They re-siege control of the objectives. They were running it down against the Jade Dragons. It was really just struggles surrounding those base sieges, and I think that's where we saw some of those limitations coming through, because their front line, it's an Artio, it's a Guan Yu. great for killing people in the jungle aspect. Not so much when everything is kind of channeled around those objectives. So maybe take a look towards stripping away the Terra and possibly even just taking Hurrywind off of the Giannis. Again, it just felt like Oni Warriors were essentially playing against the clock here.
Yeah, the Terra for Mike felt unstoppable at points, stole away the Gold Fury, and then looked great down the stretch there. Let's jump in to picks and bans for game number 2 and see if there are any pivots here from the Oni Warriors. They're going to be in that second pick slot, so the Jade Dragons still kind of with the steering wheel here. And if you're the Jade Dragons, I mean, this is always so hard to predict, isn't it? What do you change? What don't you change? Because it's all in the mind of the coach and the players themselves. But if you're the Jade Dragons, I'm not sure you change much.
Well, I'm actually on the other end of that, Dave.
Sure.
I think that the Jade Dragons definitely sweating a little bit there in that early to mid game, because had the Oni Warriors actually been able to maintain the same pressure that we saw in the jungle underneath those Phoenixes, then I think we would have seen this game over by the 30 to 35 minute mark tops. But unfortunately for them, that's where they fell short. But the Jade Dragons, that was not a clean look for them in game number 1, and they know it. Those player cams, I think, say enough as is. You can read some of the frustration, I think, in the players' faces. Like, they're not satisfied. Like, obviously they're happy, I'm sure, that they won game number 1, but the fashion in which they had to go through that ordeal, it can still be a little detrimental on the mental, because Jade Dragons really, they had no control over what was happening for the most part.
They did not make it easy on themselves, and I think it's a totally valid point. So maybe let's wrangle ourselves a little more early game control. Let's not make it as difficult on ourselves as we did in game 1. There's a mentality here from the Jade Dragons. Giannis taken away by the Oni Warriors, as well as the Yamoja and the Tiamat. So Hurrywind have to dig a little bit deeper into that God pool. Gilgamesh first and foremost here for the Jade Dragons. You know, that's kind of tried and true at this point. Not too much to pick apart as far as why we're seeing Gilgamesh prioritized there. What he brings to the game, I don't think can be understated. So a strong first pick that still leaves the door open for some flexibility.
Yeah, when I was mentioning some adjustments maybe for both sides as far as the Jade Dragons are concerned, you can't really ever go wrong with Gilgamesh. Pick just screams pressure, definitely has that early and mid-game elements as well as the late-game aspects to boot. But Oni Warriors, I think that this could be a prime opportunity for them to maybe look to strip away that Terra, because they already banned one part that I think was really giving them a lot of issues in that late game. I like this adjustment, though, into the ROM. I do believe that Astral Barrage could definitely have a little bit more of a team-fighting impact in comparison to the Heim, because Heim, you actually have to be in the fray in order to get that ultimate off, sending people to Niflheim, but Rom's on the other end of the spectrum there.
Yep.
He just gets to fire off his damage from safety, ideally, and it could be great when paired alongside of the Circuit, because you just have a lot of dive and chase.
Right, and I was going to ask if you like the run back of the Circuit, but I think talking about how it pairs with ROM may be a good thing here. And it's such an interesting point you brought up, where the team that won the game maybe feels like they have more to change just because of the way 95% of that game went. So if you're the Oni Warriors, maybe you don't have that much to change, and you're just thinking, all right, well, let's try to end the game more effectively here this time. Let's try to end things a little bit quicker. But we'll wait and see how the rest of the drafts end up rolling out. It's going to be different from PBM this time. Fafnir and then a Raijin there as well. Talk about a strong first 3. You get a lot of picks that a lot of guys on the Jade Dragons are going to be comfortable with.
Dragons know that the early to mid game is where they struggled the most, but the response of the Hera is a really interesting take here for Dardes. Yes, not going to allow Dardes to have to be forced to wait to take a pick that's maybe not as ideal. I like the Hera primarily because of that polymorph transformation. I think that is a great forced disengage factor that now this Fafnir, this Gilgamesh are going to constantly have to be on the lookout for whenever they're trying to be aggressive. And not only that, but when you have Argus just drops right on top of Raijin's head whenever he's looking for that Taiko drums, you have to remember he's fairly stationary in that. So combining Argus's DPS with that clash as well from the rest of Hera's kit on top of the Circuit and the ROM, this is great burst already from the Oni Warriors. As far as rounding things out, though, Jade Dragons, they're not going to give Onis a chance to take that Terra for themselves.
Yeah, strong ban there from the Jade Dragons. Heimdall and Kabrakan both taken away by the Oni Warriors, and then Kepri will round out our ban phase here. So Neoma Not going to get the Emoja, not going to get the Terra, not going to get the Khepri or the Fafnir. Ymir is still around. Ymir is a very popular support ban, and so could be something that the Oni Warriors are considering here. No real surprise, though, or there would be a surprise, I think, is the way I'll word this, on the Hera pick, if it were anyone but Dardes playing, but this is the type of pick that Dardes specifically does so well as. So a strong Hera pick there. If you are the Oni Warriors here, I bring up Ymir. Your mind might be a little bit more flexible, and you're not going to have to predict. The Kuzenbo locked in here for Neoma. 25% win rate across 8 games. Maybe a chance to increase that here for the Warriors.
Just further reinforces, though, the rest of this Oni composition, because a lot of the Oni comp is largely just distance from afar. They have really consistent range damage right now, and Kuzenbo as well will have to factor in shell spikes. Maybe a Thorns option might be eligible here for Neilma as well with this Kuzenbo, and he might just look to play kill hurry win the entire game, because I think that Kuzenbo definitely one of the better Guardians at just locking down a singular target, and Raijin, he does a lot of damage, but if he's having to receive some of that reflection damage for it, could put the Jade Dragons in a tight spot here. Chernobog being toyed around with. I was going to suggest maybe a Chernobog or the Hachiman even for the Jade Dragons. Has those attack speed steroid stims that plays really nicely into the Odibo builds. Also just does a decent job, I think, at faring up against the likes of Rom and some of that Astral Arrow early game clear pressure. But not only that, global asset.
There you go. Chernobog is locked in, and so all of those points you make are entirely valid there. Something that Panda Cat is going to be able to use to rotate around the map. Kuzenbo, so much backline disruption as well, not only from range, deflecting back some of that damage, but if and when Neilma is able to find his way there, that ultimate just so obnoxious to deal with. Cullen falls all the way down to the last pick here for the Jade Dragons, 9th pick overall. So now we get a look at their completed draft. Gilgamesh, Fafnir, Raijin, Chernobog, Cullen. What's the name of the game here for the Jade Dragons?
And this is really just going to hinge upon whether or not Jade Dragons are able to instantly take out the Hera or take out the Rom, because those are going to be the 2 prime candidates. I think that Kubo with the Circuit, maybe a little bit too much mobility. Kuzenbo, you never really want to be focusing the Kuzenbo unless you're looking to just punish him in the early game. And I guess the Cullen is interesting because it's really just the knock-up that you have to play around. And if the Jade Dragons are relying on Cullen for his AoE presence, it kind of plays and synergizes decently with the Fafnir and the Gilgamesh, but I would still probably be on the lookout for just trying to kill the Hera first. And it's almost like these two teams have the same exact mentality, just whoever kills the other's mid laner is probably going to be the one with the leverage.
Wow, Hercules locked in for the final pick here for the Oni Warriors. And so that'll be over in the solo lane for Nika. Are we just in the Hercules meta now? We saw Hercules a couple of times in our first matchup. Look, I totally get it. A few games does not a meta make. But the aggressive warrior pick is now something that we've seen a couple teams prioritize.
Hercules just keeps on buckling down for that same old mentality of just, we're going to try to kill you and control you before you have a chance to escape. And you can also buy a lot of time in general, depending on how well you're able to utilize that mitigate wound. So definitely something to keep an eye out for. But I like the Hercules with the Kuzenbo. I talked about the execution and the high execution at that we saw from the Oni Warriors in their draft in Game 1. And now here again in Game 2, another relatively high execution comp. I would argue that they probably have less reinitiation in the late game aspects, but their burst a little bit more favorable on the side of the Oni Warriors for that mid to late.
And so now we've talked a little bit about Hera and how the Jade Dragons might be able to get back there and disrupt that. You look at this Oni Warriors comp between a Circuit, Kuzenbo, and Hercules. And Kuzenbo specifically, I mentioned some of that backline disruption. Do you think they have the ability, with the front line and the initiation that they've got, they being the Oni Warriors, at finding some fights where they're able to get to that Raijin, get to that Chernobog, or is it going to be difficult?
They're going to have to, but I think it might even be a little bit easier for the Oni Warriors, at least for the early to mid game, because it depends on what Vote actually decides to do with this ROM. I think Astral Barrage is by far one of the best tools that you can utilize from the Hunter position that just, it applies damage, it's typically safe, The only thing is, whatever vote ults, I would not be surprised in the slightest to see Chernobog returning the favor.
And I'm curious, Taco. We had plenty of conversation around ROM and some builds we saw earlier on in the weekend. Do you want to see full-on snipe ROM build where the objectives and the enemy gods that ROM hits with that ultimate are just taking max damage, or maybe a little more standard in the Hunter build tree?
I mean, given the fact that Vote quite literally had a dominance last game, I have a hard time believing that he's not going to prioritize penetration with this ROM here, especially given that ROM, by far, one of the best Hunters, I think, to use for the bow build in general. And again, when you have the tools like a Circuit, like Argus, Kuzumo's Watery Grave as well, it is a lot to deal with for this Raijin, and that is the primary reason why I think the Jade Dragons are just trying to go so ham, because if you put a Hera behind in the early to mid game, it feels awful trying to utilize that god for the rest of the game.
And this might then be obvious given that type of statement that you make there. Are the power curves of these respective drafts in your mind a little bit different from how they were in Game 1? It felt like Oni Warriors, that mid-game hits, and there's no surprise that they're in control, but the Dragons in the late game should have controlled everything in Game 1, which they did. Do you see similar power curves here in this game, different power curves? What's your take?
I actually think that this is stalemated.
Sure.
For all the laning phases. It's really just going to depend on which side has the better execution in terms of punishing the enemy mid laner. So if the Oni Warriors, if they can replicate what they were doing in Game 1, though, definitely a scary situation there for Hurrywin, because he was under a lot of pressure in the early to mid game, and that was with the Giannis. That was with the god that actually can move across the map pretty freely. So Raijin, again, kind of similar boat as Hera, because if you're having to Thunder Crash defensively, you're normally not in a great spot.
Right, and maybe what Hera lacks in that instant mobility, you gain in a polymorph, so different ways of disengaging, but all eyes on the mid lane for this one. Can the Jade Dragons make it a quick 2-0? We'll go into Game 2 to find out.
Let's see what they're able to accomplish this time around. Oni Warriors, admittedly, were winning most of Game number 1. Didn't quite win all of Game number 1, Mifflin, as you join me and Doug here for the Dragons, taking them to Game number 2. How do you feel these drafts shook out?
I think that the Oni Warriors are bringing a lot more teamfight and early game engage. The backline disruption is incredibly strong. Nika on this Hercules should be pretty hard to kill come late game. Does have some built-in anti-heal on the side of the Jade Dragons thanks to Fine OK. So the lane likely won't be too rough, but Neoma on the Kuzumbo is going to be super annoying for Sanford Soccer to deal with, because that Watery Grave being CC immune means that once you're in that Winds of Shamash, Sam kind of wants to just stick in there, deal damage, and make sure that CC rings true. Well, you're getting knocked up consistently. You're not really able to utilize that ultimate to its full efficacy. And Hurrywin going to struggle. That Taiko drum, pretty easy for Kuzumo to kind of press 2, stand in front of you, and say, good luck.
Ooh, Hurrywin going to take a little bit of damage, a little taunt thrown his way. The jump in from Sam, some damage onto Cuvo. And, well, I was going to say maybe nobody's going to fall. It looks like that's going to be the way it is. Cuvo is precariously low. All it takes is a little bit of setup, and that can go a long way. The minion wave favors Dardes and the Warriors. And so, no first blood as of yet. But not for lack of trying.
No, I'm prepared for a patient pace to this game.
The Warriors were.
Yeah, the Warriors were
incredibly patient.
Super ready for it in Game 1, and it got them really far, so I'm not sure that they're going to shift up too much here, and they don't have to worry about that miraculous comeback mechanic that is a 40-minute max range Janus ult, right? Instead, Hurrywin is playing a much more standard mage inside of the Raijin, so I think that the Warriors, if they want to, can postpone this match a little bit later on. If anything, I'm expecting the Jade Dragons to be the ones who are trying to make something happen inside of the early game. Hurrywin on this Raijin has the option of using that Thunder Crash aggressively, which is something that Dardes just can't deal with. He's going to get hit by it if Hurrywin wants to land it, and when you've got someone like a Gilgamesh backing you up out of the jungle, you're likely wanting to land that Thunder Crash aggressively more often than not.
We'll see how aggressive he can get. Let's talk relics. Last time around, it was all beads for the Dragons, Mifflin. There's only one that stands out. I believe the Bracer picked up here for PBM. It's something he's been toying around with a lot lately, and he's been talking about, I think, vocal about not just on Twitter, but just in general. I mean, is this something that we're going to see more often? Is it overrated, underrated, just where it needs to be and can occasionally be pulled out the way it is here?
I think it's pretty strong. It does have some slight differences to Frenzy, for example. So you're getting 15% more power instead of 15% increased damage dealt, and power is always going to be a little bit less valuable as it is mitigatable by defense, but it's that versatility of the Bracer affording you movement speed when you're sub 50% HP in a game like Game 1, where I feel like the majority of team fights were dictated by vision. Having additional vision can only feel good. Neilma not feeling very good, dropped down to about 50% HP just for daring to look at the buff. And here's PBM, drops the Bracer. Well, they're dealing more damage for now. I mean, you're going to clear the wave. I think just keeping it on cooldown feels pretty good, considering how short that cooldown actually is. I think it's 100 seconds, I want to say, if I'm remembering off the top. I'm not like Rain Man. I don't know. Oh, I do know. Yeah, I'm Rain Man. 100 seconds.
And also, yeah, I was kind of there in the bottom left. I was watching the timer go down. I was like, you gonna just do some math here, buddy.
Dude, I totally forgot I could look at the timer, Core. I'm gonna keep it 100.
Well, hey, it's at 66 seconds that are going to go down. Yeah, that's unfortunate mispronunciation. Otherwise, PBM getting aggressive, making the rotation. You had asked about this earlier. We were kind of chatting about it and talking about when people specifically leave the duo lane. I believe we were talking about hunters, which is something like that we could find, but could also be a very, very help to actually determine when they are leaving it. PBM leaving a little before level 5 here and kind of forcing the hand of maybe Neil Ma to come to the mid lane, keeping things pretty much where they were. You had anticipated the Dragons maybe wanting to pump the pace of this early game a little bit faster, and I'm starting to agree with you. About 500 gold, hovering between that and 400, favoring the Warriors as of right now. Depends on minion waves and the buff camps that are being taken at the time. They still have something of a lead, and as long as they can hold on to that, especially if they get a first blood bounty, that starts to expand maybe closer to 1,000.
Yeah, I think that Mike decides to leave lane a little bit earlier on this time around because he realizes that the 2v2 is not very advantageous for the Jade Dragons. Fafnir and Chernobog together likely aren't going to put out the same damage potential or fight potential that a Kuzumbo and Rom has, so instead wants to leave it up to the 1v1. Chernobog up against Rom in the 1v1 is maybe a little bit more favored towards the Jade Dragons, as he is going to have just more damaging abilities. I mean, abilities that actually deal damage. So Chernobog has a slight early game advantage in that he just has better poke.
Well, the Dragons wanted a red buff steal and get a red buff steal. They're able to scoop that one away from the Warriors. Dardes is now going to be, well, I guess sad is the only way I can choose to describe it. He's not going to have his red buff, and so hitting a little less hard than what we're going to be used to seeing. Herwind, however, is going to be just fine. In fact, they're going to be jumping in on Neil. There's going to be a stun against the wall. The Taiko drums, and look, those body blocks, the control from the Dragons. They find first blood up against Neil Ma.
Yeah, Neil tries to defend his red buff with the Watery Grave, and, well, you don't have CC immunity. You probably don't want to be surrounded by 4 members of the Jade Dragons. The lockdown is there, the damage is there, and Neil Ma is no longer there. That is first blood for the Order side team, but gold still favoring the Oni Warriors slightly. I think experience also slightly in their favor at this point, but got to keep an eyes on the momentum of this game, and it feels like the Jade Dragons are dictating the pace 6 minutes in.
And momentum has a name. It is Cuvo Fred in my mind. Last game, this Circuit made the difference in a lot of those early game fights. I mean, was winning it. Yes, maybe you can also throw Herwind's ults to the side along with it, where, yeah, if he hits, he wins, as showcased at the very end. If he doesn't,
just 2.
They don't, as they saw for 38 full minutes of that game. But Cuvo was definitely a thorn in their side, constantly getting into the backline, constantly hunting down specifically Herwind, but getting anybody that he could. There were a couple of times he grabbed FineOK, and so that is someone I am still keeping my eye on, because if Cuvo isn't able to get even half that performance out of this game, then it feels like it could be a lot easier for the Dragons to start to run with the game.
But Cuvo still has some good targets that he could try and isolate inside of this match. If he's able to rotate into the Soul lane, if FineOK isn't close to that Rage transformation, pretty easy for Circuit to lock him down. Could head over into the duo lane, since Panicat has essentially been left alone on an island. It means that Cuvo Fred on the rotation of duos in a 2v1 up against this Chernobog. And even if he escapes into a shadow, well, either lands back down and Vote can finish off the kill with his snipes, or flies over to one of your other teammates. You got to hope that they can finish off the kill after you've applied your effort. So he's got some targets that he could elect to go for, and he's already benefiting from a 1-level lead as Cubo Fred. So the Oni Warrior's in a good position right now. Neilma, though, using that blink very aggressively, finds nothing. Sanford Soccer just leaps out.
I mean, Neilma, those blinks were crucial in game number 1, the RDO being able to display specifically. Again, Heroin. Feels like they spent a lot of time beating on Heroin now that I'm thinking back on it. That was mainly the goal for the Warriors in game 1. Much more difficult to do on the Raijin, it feels like. So they're going to collapse in. Aggressive Thunder Crash. You wanted to see those, and we're seeing them from Heroin on the Cuvo. FineOK is in the jungle over here. He's alone as well. Neil and Dardas get the message from Cuvo, and Cuvo goes for the ult. Nika's making the rotation in as well. PBM. Sam for Soccer get aggressive to save their solo laner. Ultimately, they burn 2 ults. I mean, Nika's boulder's down. Cuvo is the one who uses his ult right there on to FineOK, and they get out just fine.
Yeah,
and okay.
Oh, goodness. Stop. Cubo Fred looked like he wanted FineOK to go a little bit more aggressively.
You looked into my soul for that one and said stop. That hit me to my core.
You, like, dropped the mic. I'm like, all right, it's my turn to talk, and then you hit me with the FineOK meme, dude. Come on, bro. It's 2021.
I've been doing it for a while, man. I cast him back in the Challenger circuit.
Wow, that has been a while.
In the way before time.
Yeah, back when FineOK was in the chat. Wow, that is... Anyway, so, yeah, Cubo Fred holds on to FineOK and hopes that FineOK sticks around in the engagement a little bit longer, maybe trying to bait him to chase him out as Nika was rotating in past that speed buff. But FineOK, ever the veteran, spots the Hercules in the corner of his eye and says, all right, I mean, I got Circuit ult. I mean, there's not much else to fight over here.
Yeah, what am I going to do, get their speed buff like that? That's way too much.
Yeah, speed's too far away, and I don't care enough about these back camps to trade my life, so walks away with his life.
And loses his blue buff. So ultimately, maybe favoring, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, the Oni Warriors, they're starting to push that 700 gold mark once again. That Scorpion on left taken by the Dragons, Scorpion on right taken by the Warriors. And those enhanced buffs starting to maybe make their play into the game. Gold Fury will be spawned about 20 seconds, just a little over, until we have a Pyromancer even available in this game. And I'm not going to mention Fire Giant because he doesn't show up realistically until 20 minutes, even though he's on the map prior to that. We'll see if any of these teams can get aggressive for those neutral objectives. Speaking of getting aggressive, Sam is in the neighborhood of the solo lane. He's going to be able to blink in, does not get the control that he wanted onto Nika, misses the drop kick as well. The Winds of Shamash thrown out there. But Nika's going to be able to live to see another day.
And Sanford Soccer dedicating his time to attempting these ganks kind of hurts him if he doesn't get anything off of it, because he's already looking at a 2-level deficit. It's Cubo Fred handily in the lead.
Wow, Nika wants this fight. Granted, it's still 2 warriors hitting each other, but with the boulder available, a little bit more damage. He would have been able to potentially find that kill onto FineOK. Lucky for FineOK, he's not going to have to deal with that one. Red buffs being respawned and taken. Last time around, it was stolen from Dardas. He is going to be able to maintain a buff this time around. It's little things, Mifflin. We had highlighted it last time. It's the ward coverage. It's positioning. Right now, it feels like solo lane aggression in favor of Nika that is going to make or break this game. It is making the game for the Warriors. 1,000 gold up now as they continue this very, very special onslaught against the Dragons.
Yeah, 2 levels inside a solo, 2 levels in the jungle, 1 level in support. The Oni Warriors are benefiting greatly from experience, but it's how they're able to apply that to the rest of the map. It doesn't matter if Nika has a lead over FineOK if he's just not rotating out of lane, so I'm waiting for the Warriors to pick their spot. I'm thinking it's going to be the Gold Fury pretty soon, maybe the next 2 or 3 minutes. We'll see the Oni Warriors start to rotate their way across the map and then try and force this engagement here, but they have to play carefully. Jade Dragons have a lot of space control. Winds of Shamash, Tycho drop, even the Dragon transformation kind of locks down part of the lane. So Jade Dragons could make it pretty hard for these team fights to go the way of the Oni Warriors, at least in the early game, and we haven't even brought up the dive potential that the Dragons have. When there's a god like Hera on the other side who is greatly immobile, relies on a health shield and her buddy Argus to keep her alive, things like Thunder Crash, things like a leap in from Gilgamesh, even a blink ultimate from FineOK can all make it very, very hard for someone like Dardas to survive.
Well, Pyromancer started up by the Jade Dragons. We're 12 minutes into the game. They've gotten a single kill that is on the board, but that Pyromancer is going to help equalize things just a little bit more in their favor. Still leaning towards the Warriors.
That's a lot of XP.
That's a lot of experience, hovering over 3,000. And it's been great. PBM forced to transform next to those Oracle Harpies. He's going to be able to disengage, but that is a clean ult to pull away from the Dragons. So the Warriors using their advantage, and you had highlighted this next Fury, in fact, first Fury, is going to be maybe more important. In fact, PBM gets caught out a second time. Good taunts from Cuvo Fred, but do they have the follow-up damage? The leap from PBM right into the red buff gets him out of there. Cuvo is still looking for more, and they might be able to find it. It's Whirlwind and PBM in the jungle versus 4, and that red buff is getting stripped fast.
Yeah, it's gone already. Dardes picks that one up, and stripping away that dragon transformation from the Jade Dragons themselves means that the Oni Warriors have effectively removed the Dragon's ability to go towards this Oni Fury. They need that to kind of make that power push, to get that coerce on multiple targets and speed up these objectives. So until that's back and available, the Dragons really don't have much they could do on the map right now. Luckily, though, they'd already taken the Pyromancer, so they're benefiting at least there. That's essentially the trade in my mind. PBM's ultimate for a Pyromancer, and, well, that's a trade that I think the Dragons are just fine taking.
And they're, I mean, like you said, not just fine taking. I mean, they're coasting along. This is very much closer, I believe, than it was at this point in game number 1. The Oni Warriors were able to find a lot more picks. They were able to open up a lot more of the conversations. Yeah, and their gold lead was definitely further in the lead. A couple of good steals, though, happened from the Dragons. PBM got that Fury. I believe they took a Pyromancer at one point away from them as well. And so the Dragons kind of hovering more or less in control than they were last time. And the Warriors, I think, struggling to find the same positioning. I mean, is this just going to be the way that this game tends to drift? It feels like they're both waiting kind of for that big 5-on-5. The first one we might see is this Fury.
Yeah, I really think it comes down to when do these solo laners decide to leave lane. Is it going to be Fine OK? Is it going to be Nika? Whichever one rotates out first is going to heavily dictate which way this Gold Fury goes. And as of right now, both teams very patient around the map. And this is kind of reminiscent of game 1. I mean, we said earlier that it is likely going to be a similar pace. I wouldn't argue, or I wouldn't say rather, that one team has a vast advantage in the late game. I might be slightly favoring the composition of the Oni Warriors just because of some of these targeted picks to deal with what the Jade Dragons have, but I'm talking like 5.5 to 4.5 odds, and odds like that, odds that are so close, can be made up for by play on field. And so far, the Jade Dragons have been doing a very good job of controlling the pace of this one, controlling where these neutral objective fights can happen, but vision may be favoring the Oni Warriors around the Gold Fury itself. Neilma able to control the pit there, so someone from the Dragons has to rotate over.
They're going to try to control Vote, not going to get the drop kick on him. Winds of Shamash drop down, Vote up into the sky. If the snipes connect, Sam will die here. One more shot is a double take, but he's not going to be able to connect. Vote comes crashing back down. Neil joins the fray, and Cuvo's hiding in the jungle. Sam gets out with his life. The Warriors have the aggressive positioning. They're going to move forward. It's just going to be the Oracle Harpies for Dardes and Cuvo. Neil and Nika have made their big rotations.
Watch Dart as Nika's here, finds PBM. Polymorph not quite on the mark, and Fine OK finds 3.
What a big knockup from Fine OK, but no follow-up from the team just yet. Argus gets dropped to keep Dardes alive, but no one's been able to dive on him. Neil Ma is sitting at about 1/3 HP, and he walks out with his life. Argus is the next big health bar for the team. The Warriors are just dancing around, waiting to see if the Dragons are going to pick up a Fury. And they're just not. They're going to leave. They recognize that they came and got what they wanted. The beads on Vote gone. That seems like a pretty big win along with the ults that were used.
And now beads on Hurrywin lost as well. Worth noting that the Bracer has been upgraded from Mike, so that is operating as a Sentry Ward. Could be pretty nice considering how much fighting we've been having over wards inside of this entire set so far. And we get a little micro look on what it's like to jungle here at the tail end of Season 8. Sanford Soccer tries to gank Vote. And, well, it was a level 12 Gilgamesh to a level 17 Rom. It's not a fight that he's very confident in taking. Vote not quite able to finish off that kill with his ultimate. Does allow Sanford Soccer to run away there, but tough situation. Sam pretty far behind, only about 1 level against his contemporary inside of Cuvo Fred, but for just general game state, you don't want your carry being like 4 levels down on the enemy ADC, or your jungle rather. And it's very tough for him to pick these spots. Instead, I think it's all about where he's placing this Winds of Shamash.
Well, that's going to come into the equation here. Fury at 1/3 health, and there's a good push from Nika. Sam for Soccer takes a lot of his health bar, but it's Neil who's isolated. The boulder comes breaking through the dragon. Sam gets thrown back to the Sharks, and they happily chomp down on their lunch, but can Neil get out alive? Great play from the Warriors to peel for their support. They get the 1-for-0 trade. Now, it might not be the Fury, but it's something else to push them further in the lead.
Man, there was so much damage from Hurrywind on that disengage. The Taiko drum hit like 3 people 4 times each. So much. If Final K gets there just 3 seconds faster, maybe, to get a little bit of CC lockdown from his base stance ultimate, I think that fight maybe swings in favor of the Jade Dragons a little bit more so, but Sam for Soccer gets caught out, gets pulled in, loses out on his defensive relic as well as engage tool as Nika's able to push him away immediately after that Winds of Shamash drops, and Cubo Fred sees a low target. You better believe he's trying to spread that poison, immediately drops the Surcat onto him, and from there, I mean, that's all she wrote. Sam for Soccer was a walking corpse for the entirety of that fight.
We've now hit the 18-minute mark if you're keeping track at home, and PandaCat going up against Vote toe for toe. Vote doesn't have any mana, but he does have a Cubo hanging out in the jungle. And if you had missed it, the Warriors pick up that first Gold Fury. It took a little while for them to finally get there. I think about 5-6 minutes ago they started looking, and that's when they're finally able to secure it. But the Dragons still looking to play aggressive. Neil gets stunned, Neil gets poked, Neil shrugs it off because he's Kuzenbo and doesn't care about the damage you're throwing out at him. Next big objective is going to be this Pyromancer, respawned and on the map. We'll see if either the Dragons or the Warriors are going to be strong enough to kind of flex that on their opponent.
You know, any Warriors with a 2,000 gold lead, or maybe 1,000, 18 minutes into this game, maybe closer to 19. It's not a large bit of separation here. I think that neither squad can really feel confident in stepping up whatsoever. Experience has also been slowly leaking back in favor of the Jade Dragons, still heavily on the side of the Oni Warriors, but was around 4,000 experience just a couple moments ago, has been cut down to 2,500 at this point in the match. It's all about vision, I think.
Yeah.
That seems to be the real through thread of this set so far, and Oni Warriors have a lot of wards on the map and a lot of wards inside of their pockets. 3 sentries and 3 normals available to the 2 sentries of the Jade Dragons.
And you have to remember, though, whenever that bracer is up, you had highlighted this earlier, it does count
3 sentries
as that sentry, which technically means, and assuming this is going to work properly, you could throw down the bracer, have essentially a 6th sentry on the map that otherwise is just literally not available to the Warriors because it will destroy one of their other wards or just cost them a pretty penny to do so. So it maybe opens up some fun conversations to be had about the vision. You had mentioned this in game number 1, micro play. The macro play has been patience from these two teams. The micro play has been little bits of damage onto the towers, little bits of vision, maybe even a little bit of a Chernobog ult over here into the dual lane. And oh my god, PandaCat is getting aggressive, gets a lot of the good hits. Vote just turns tail and runs, but Sam's here, pings a couple of the wards. Look at the positioning of the Warriors. They're making a good rotation. Sam is going to go in, misses the drop kick. Those Winds of Shamash get dropped down, and he's going to call off the aggression because Neil, Ma, and Dardes are here. Argus is dropped. Neil gets aggressive onto the jungler. Hurrywind is isolated right now. The snipes are going to be good from Vote, but not enough to find the kill. Just yet one more hit, and Argus secures the kill for Dardes. A gank gone wrong now as Sam is isolated between 4 members of the Warriors, and just a bounce back and hearken to game number 1, they lead 4-1.
Man, Jade Dragons got so kill hungry there. PandaCat does drop Vote down to like 20% HP, but Vote still had beads, still had Aegis, had a ton of vision inside the jungle, and when you're spending 20 seconds chasing, that's 20 seconds that the Oni Warriors have to respond to that chase. They send in a ton of people right behind the Dragons as we see Sam for Soccer jump out. Hurrywind jumps in. Just a lot of desync on the macro play. And now Fire Giant being looked at. They're right to do it. I mean, we're 21 minutes in. Maybe it's felt a little bit shorter since there hasn't been so many kills, but Sam for Soccer is still dead. Hurrywind's still dead. Panda still dead. The Oni Warriors playing very well with that timing.
Yeah, not much they have to worry about steal potential. I mean, FineOK's quite literally on the other side of the map, and PBM is hanging out mid lane. You are just fine to secure this. Granted, you also have to have the damage to do so. They finally get the Fire Giant, 5 members strong, and a 3,000 gold lead. Cuvo, just for good measure, is also pushing down a tower on right, and they're able to get a pretty good swing in their favor. Pyromancer just as icing on the cake, And the Warriors finally take a lead this game.
They do, and now they've got a lot of gold left on the map to collect. I don't think they need to go into a Phoenix necessarily at this point, but certainly strip away some of these tier 2 towers from the Jade Dragons, whose defense is better this time around, I'd argue, now that they've got a more standard mage instead of Raijin. We've already highlighted the space control that their composition brings. If FinalK gets there quickly and can close gap on a Dardes, who has been left alone for the majority of this game. 1-0-3 is the Hera for Oni Warriors. Can't be having that if you're a Jade Dragons fan, especially considering how much dive potential their draft has. I think that there are opportunities and even potential that we see the Jade Dragons step up to these tier 2 towers and try to put up a soft defense. I don't expect them to commit their lives to defending these towers themselves. Or maybe they're not even going to show up to them whatsoever. It looks like a split push, actually, with Sam Frasaka on the opposite side. That's another viable strategy, at least able to match some of the gold.
Oh, we'll see if they can do a little bit more than that. Whirlwind burned down before he can react. That was happening in the first few minutes of game number 1. Now it's happening 23 minutes in. That means he's got 50 seconds to sit in timeout and figure out what he is going to do with this one. Nika gets aggressive, good push. You had mentioned it and called it. That's Phoenix on the left-hand side. And now the pings are coming through. They're extending the gold even further with the tier 2.
Yeah, I think that might be another Phoenix, by the way. I mean, Hurric's dead for 30 more seconds. I think the Oni Warriors could just go ahead and keep walking in. They've maintained the majority of their ultimates.
Now they're going to be able to get aggressive. BBM gets a transfer just before Nika can get the knock-up. Good knock-up coming from FinalK. Neil's low. Neil gets shot by the Phoenix as well. Aren't able to close in and kill him. They can't kill Nika. They save the Phoenix. And they have 8 seconds still for Whirlwind to respawn, so it's going to be enough to thwart the Warriors' push this time around. With them, they still got a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, Primal Fury is exactly where they're headed. So what we got so far? 2 tier 2 towers, a Phoenix on the left-hand side, which is likely the most important Phoenix in the game of Smite. Primal Fury on the tail end. They got Pyromancer after the Fire Giant. I think there was a tier 1 tower that also got stripped away. This is a huge gold swing, and you can see it on the charts there. Abyssal drop for the Jade Dragons. Now we're talking thousands upon thousands of gold, nearly 9,000 gold in favor of the Oni Warriors, and they can head back to base, spend all that gold in hand, almost entire items completed for each one of these guys on the side of the Warriors, and these team fights are starting to really look out of focus here for the Jade Dragons. I mean, they have got to play nearly perfectly and hope for a couple of mistakes from the Oni Warriors, because really, the Oni Warriors haven't been making many.
I mean, they didn't make many in game number 1 either, but still,
there was
enough of a bounce back. We'll see if they can do that this time around. 1-0-4, 4-0. If you want to look at Dardes and Cuvo respectively, they're not dying. Neither is Vote as of right now. And so a lot of pressure being put specifically onto Sam and onto Whirlwind to make sure they aren't able to perform the way they did in game number 1, at least towards the, last 5 minutes of game number 1, as that's where they really started to pop off. And so, well, I mean, holding on to this, it really does just feel like the same, almost deja vu, almost the exact same game. Control from the Warriors leads to a kill lead for the Warriors, leads to a gold lead for the Warriors, leads to a Fire Giant, you guessed it, for the Warriors, to more gold, to more map control. And yet I'm still patiently holding my breath for when a Phoenix Siege could potentially go wrong.
Yeah, but the difference in this game and the last one is the pacing. The Warriors pulled a lead later on in the match, would have pushed their lead much harder than what we saw in game 1. I mean, it was, 6,000 gold at the 15-minute marks in game 1 for the Warriors in the lead, and they kind of backed up. They went for Primal Furies. They went for mid-camps. They stole buffs. This time around, they pull a lead 20 minutes into the game, and they immediately shove down a Phoenix and every single tower from the Jade Dragons. It seems like the Warriors have rectified the issue that they identified in game 1. Look, guys, we controlled the match, but we gave the Jade Dragons too much time. We gave them the opportunity to make the comeback. The reason the Dragons were able to put up defenses on their Phoenixes is because we didn't see a Phoenix Siege until 30 some odd minutes into the game, when gold doesn't matter anymore. 26 minutes in, when we're not even starting to start our 6-tier items for the Jade Dragons, gold matters a lot. The Oni Warriors are really pushing the issue now.
Well, Pyromancer, Fire Giant bounced about back. It should return Fire Giant, then Pyro, since that's the order the Warriors took them in. No Primal Furies, that was stripped away, so the Warriors have an even easier time, theoretically, around the next Fire Giant. Fireman Yunwei is being dealt with by Sam as of right now on the left-hand side of the map, meaning the only other members, or all 4 other members of the Dragons are on the right. Fine, okay, close enough to spot this out. Same thing for PBM. At the FG has been started by the Warriors.
50.
And they are getting pretty close to securing it. I mean, Vote's not stopping the DPS just yet. Heroin, Panda Cat are zoned out right now by Nika. It's getting lower and lower as the time goes on, but the Warriors finally drop it. They leave it pretty low, and now the Engage is going to be able to drop off. Heroin gets burned before he can even react, and the same thing happens to Panda Cat. The 2 carries gone on the side of the Dragons. Dardes gets aggressed on. Fine, okay, is looking for the kill, but a great push by Nika saves his life for just a little bit longer. The shield is going to be able to push it even further. Vote gets a kill onto Sam. They kill off Fine, okay, they kill off PBM, and they don't lose a member doing it. 10-1, the Warriors are looking to run down mid and win this game.
The Oni Warriors bait the Jade Dragons into defending the Fire Giant, and well, the Dragons were not ready for it. The target selection there was bad from the Jade Dragons. I mean, some people are on Dardes, Mike's focusing Neilma, Vote dropped low. So many targets dropped low on the side of the Warriors, but it seems like the Jade Dragons could not agree on who they wanted to focus, and this is what happens at the top level of play when you're not able to agree with your teammates. You get trolled. You get Neilma walking around your base, dragging a Titan around.
Game number 1, they control it for 38 minutes, and then a couple of slip-ups, maybe 37, maybe 36. We can give a little more control over to the Dragons. This time around, 28 minutes, they secure themselves that win. They do not have to take anywhere near as long to fight it. And a lot of it, like you had just highlighted, is the Dragons' point of control. I mean, the Warriors are winning that game a majority of the time. Even early on when there's no big kills, they have the farm.
So I think it's an argument of which win was more convincing, right? When we're going into Game 3, who's convinced you more here today? Is it the Jade Dragons who make a late-game miraculous 40-minute comeback, or is it the Oni Warriors who in, like 70 minutes of combined Smite play have controlled 60 of them? I think the Warriors have a lot of momentum rocking right now.
It'll be fun to see how game number 3 shakes out. These last 2 have been nail-biters. We'll see what happens right after this.
Gotta take off my jacket for this one. Dude, this...
No, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy.
You see how happy every single one of those players was wearing their brand new Inside Apparel Company apparel? You're going to be just as happy once you get your hands on your own Inside Apparel Company apparel, and you can get it at shop.smiteproleague.com, whether it's going to be team jerseys or the coveted SPL merch. If you just love the league in general, shop.smiteproleague.com is your place to go. You got hoodies, t-shirts, hats, beanies. Taco is doing a fantastic job of modeling for us, all furnished by our friends over at Insight Apparel Company. Taco, we move on to Game 3. There's a very real chance this could have been a 2-0 for the Oni Warriors had they closed out Game number 1. They looked like the better team there in Game 2. They looked like the stronger team for most of Game 1. And so now it's really the Dragons who have to bounce back in Game 3.
Definitely Dragons in the hot seat right now as they try to find the appropriate measures to take to try and actually deal with a lot of this pressure that's been coming out of the Oni homies here today, Dave. And we talked about it on the desk. It was just a kill or be killed type of composition from both of these teams, but Dardes seemingly getting the better end of things with this Hera. She is just so hard to micromanage throughout these chaotic team fights, particularly because of the fact that there's a Circuit, but also Nilma with that Kuzumbo just keeping everybody spinning.
Yeah, that the front line and the engage for the Oni Warriors this game felt great. But Dardes did as well. It's one thing for your front line to make all this space, and then your carries have to then be able to capitalize on that. In this Hera, there was some concern around the dive of the Jade Dragons, but look at this. Dardes lives, you got the polymorph, you got a little sustain, you got some shielding. It all tends to come up Dardes here in this game. And the Hera just looked incredible. And that's it's such a Dardes pick, isn't it? He goes 4-0-6 and he's making plays like that. The 1-2 punch of Dardes and Cuvo Fred plus the rest of the setup from the rest of the team was just too much here for the Jade Dragons.
Pretty painful match for Hurrywin and Panda Cat, I would say. They just did not really get to be factors. I mean, even in a lot of those highlight clips, what did we see? Hurrywin trying to undergo the Tycho drums and dying before he ever really had a chance to even cast his ability damage. So, such a huge component that the Jade Dragons, I think, were relying on throughout the game 2 in terms of just having the burst damage necessary to try and combat that out of the Oni homies. Just not really ever able to be a participant. Vote seems to be sending out the same prayers that Neilma did. Neilma's apparently came into full effect there. I don't know if it was the Nika diff necessarily. I think that honestly Neilma and Dardes really stood out in that game, especially alongside of the way that Cuvo was playing the Circuit. But as far as the Jade Dragons are concerned, I think more importantly, Hera might just be gone. Like we saw Giannis get taken away from Hurry, then we might see the exact same thing here with that Hera.
If the Oni Warriors want that Hera, it might have to come out in the first 3 picks again because, to your point there, Taco, no mid lane pick in game 1 for the Oni Warriors through the first 3, and that meant Morgan and Hera got banned out in the second wave of bans. This is game 1, of course. That we're talking about, and then the Oni Warriors jump on the chance of picking Hera. They pick Hera 3rd overall before that second wave of bans roll through. And so I think you're spot on there, where this is something the Jade Dragons now have to consider as a ban, because it wasn't like there wasn't damage reaching Dardes on Hera, because we saw a couple of the highlights there where Hera was like at 100 HP. It just felt so unkillable at times, and it literally was unkillable. Dardes did not die that game, and so the Oni Warriors do make things interesting. I said this one could be interesting, and it sure has been. So let's delay no further. Let's find us a winner, and maybe it'll be a little bit more apparent who that might be after picks and bans for game number 3 come to a close. Jade Dragons still in that first ban slot. So, Taco, the Jade Dragons, they've, in game 2, in the first pick slot, banned Osiris, Odin, and Artemis. In game 1, they banned Osiris, Odin, and Artemis. And so the first change we get is the Circuit ban.
Seems as though Cuvo having that ultimate chase down factor as well, because even in circumstances where it seemed as though Hurry was about to get away, managed to survive the last breath, suddenly you're Raijin still trying to run away from the likes of a Circuit. So I like that adjustment so far from the Jade Dragons, because taking away at least one out of the 2 problems that I think that were definitely stemming out from that Oni Warriors composition, always a good takeaway. And It's going to be the Hera.
Wow.
They don't even want to chance it in the slightest. So now Oni Warriors having to make the decision between whether they want to take out that Morgan Le Fay or just see what the Jade Dragons decide to do next. But Odin could very well become the power pick play here for the Jade Dragons, maybe even that Osiris.
Yep, just to reiterate, in games 1 and 2, the Jade Dragons banned Osiris, Odin, and Artemis, so it is a complete 3 change here from the Jade Dragons, banning out Serket, Gilgamesh, and Hera. Now, not so big a change here for the Oni Warriors. It's been Tiamat, Yamoja, and then something banned out in back-to-back games. Ymir in game 1 filled that 3rd spot, and then Giannis in game 2. So it'll be the exact same bans for the Oni Warriors heading into game number 3. Morgan Le Fay came to mind there, Taco, and Morgan Le Fay is locked in first and foremost here for the Jade Dragons. Is there a risk with Morgan Le Fay, some of that immobility, that you're giving away too much picking her this early on?
Well, as far as risk is concerned, I think the only risk the Jade Dragons had to worry about was Oni Warriors. Like, I had no doubt in my mind it would have been an Odin as an immediate response.
Right? Yep.
Just when you boil it all down, Dolson, we've seen Fine OK on Odin. We've seen Nika single-handedly.
Yeah, that game was gross, wasn't it?
He was literally the LeBron of Odin, okay? And now to know that he not only gets the Odin, but also the follow-up team fighting asset with this Artemis. These responses from the Oni Warriors are extraordinary, honestly. I think it's insanity that they managed to get this far with it. And don't get me wrong, Morgan Le Fay, she's definitely strong, but I'm not sure that it outweighs the strength of Odin Artemis team fight capability.
And I will rephrase the same thing for the 3rd time, but I'm going to change it around a little bit here, keep things fresh. Odin and Artemis have been banned in back-to-back games by the Jade Dragons. They are not banned in this game, and the Oni Warriors jump on that opportunity to pick up the Odin and the Artemis. So now, maybe a chance to see why the Jade Dragons put so much emphasis in game 1 and 2 on banning out these 2 picks. A different look to start off, though, for the Jade Dragons. They picked both of their carries and then a Cabrakan. And this is kind of high level. What kind of risk do you run in a draft picking your carries this early on? I mean, is that really a disadvantage? Not really. I mean, you get strong carries, but now you got Odin locked in. I mean, are you really all that worried about what the Warriors can pick as counterplay?
For my assessment, I think that the Izanami I think Jade Dragons were kind of forced into taking their Hunter, at least. You don't necessarily have to pull your Guardian because you see the Odin. You can assume that Oni Warriors are probably going to try to find another frontline asset to complement it after the fact, but you need, whatever ADC you wanted to prioritize pressure with, and I think that Izanami can be a very strong pressure response. Maybe even one of the best in terms of just trying to establish clear dominance in that laning phase. And Dark Portal as well, I think, is going to have a lot of utility in the team fights because with that Khepri now being locked in, if they're able to silence those Scarab's blessings from being able to take effect, then Jade Dragons can find a little bit of leverage, I believe, in trying to counteract that revive potential. But
yep.
I'm still definitely leaning pretty heavily towards this Oni Warriors draft because whether the Jade Dragons like it or not, they are a team that's more than capable of high execution compositions. We've seen them do it time and time again. But this is where I think it comes into the discussion of this team that I think they might overcomplicate things for themselves at times. And what I mean by that is that you have the Izanami, you have these seconds, literal seconds to work with to try and prevent Khepri, Odin, Artemis from just overtaking and overwhelming everything in a team fight. But if you're not precise with the timing on your silences, if you're not precise with the lockdown on those Cabrakan walls, you're just gonna get turn and burned instantly.
Right. And you mentioned counterplay around the Khepri ultimate, so maybe a sneaky good Thanatos ban here, something that can counter out that Khepri ultimate pretty well. Sam does like Thanatos, so it makes some sense for the Oni Warriors to take away that Thanatos. And Nike ends up being the pick here, Taco. And so with Odin and Nike both on the board, one is going to have to flex into non-solo lane, and we'll wait and see what the Oni Warriors pick a little bit later on. They already have a Khepri, so we know it's going to be a mid laner. Does Nike jungle maybe feel a little bit more comfortable than Odin jungle, or could both work?
Nike jungle, I think, is a little bit more comfortable here. I think it's way better suited to just throw Nika onto the Odin here. Don't force Cuvo into taking Odin because you get way more utility, I think, out of Odin being in that solo lane position with the hybrid base builds. Looks as though Jade Dragons are just going to try and see if they can really just throw all the DPS possible onto the Artemis, kill her before the Scare's Blessing Revive has a chance to take off. Same thing with the Fenrir. So this is a lot of aggression here from the Jade Dragons in the early to mid game. But again, I think that the Oni Warriors just, you know, you see like 1 or 2 good pieces for the Jade Dragons, but the sucker punch back from the Oni Warriors, I genuinely believe that they have hard won this drafting phase.
Even with the Zhonghui? Although you like Zhonghui.
I think his damage is insane.
You like Zhonghui. And actually, I think that's been kind of a thread that we've seen every time Zhonghui gets locked in. For so long there, I was like, look, Zhonghui is like 0-6. Somebody's got to prove it to me. We finally see a Zhonghui win. But that entire time, there were pros, there were people around the scene, and you know, a lot of voices saying, look, Zhonghui is just not as bad as his 0% win rate might suggest. So, Zhonghui mid, though, is what we're looking at here. Does it work against the composition that the Jade Dragons have drafted?
I think so, because the Nike is a really nice complement towards the Zhonghui. A lot of people think, oh, Sunder meta Nike, she just dies instantly. But you have to remember the slow that's going to be provided in that AoE pressure. And when you already have the Odin cage to kind of lock everything down on top of that, you have the boar coming into play, you have the Zhonghui. There's just so much spam, I think, in a singular area that's going to make it so difficult for the Jade Dragons to really look for that ISO pick lockdown potential.
Well, look, the Oni Warriors, they bring things to a game number 3 here. Things are going to get interesting, but things are not going to get interesting just yet. We have a quick remake to work through. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll get right back into picks and bans and then hopefully into game 3. Appreciate the patience, everybody, because this one is very anticipated. We want to see if the Oni Warriors can continue this trend and take down the Jade Dragons. And this would make things very interesting in the playoff for Phase 2 picture, Taco, because we talked way at the beginning of this death segment, however long ago that was, that the Oni Warriors kind of control their destiny as far as seeding goes. Tomorrow they got a matchup against the Scarabs. After that, they'll face the Titans, and that's really the one they have to look towards. They're doing themselves a lot of favors here playoff-wise if they can get a win over the Dragons.
This would also be a bit of a statement set, I think, because the Dragons have definitely been on a tear. I mean, you have to remember, they went from bottom of the standings, just instantly jumped right to the top, no questions asked. It seems as though when the Dragons really want to focus up, Dolson, it seems as though they are a team that is unstoppable, but I do feel as though they have definitely met their match up against this Oni Warriors roster today because, I mean, games 1 and 2, we've already talked about it enough. Warriors have largely looked to be in the driver's seat for this set.
Yep.
And whether or not they're going to be able to maintain that, this is, I'm going to say exactly what I told you during that break. This is a composition where I see the Oni Warriors have this picks and bans, and I'm dodging the lobby.
Well, that's what just happened, right? They tried to remake, but then they learned that
unfortunately they have to
keep the same picks, right? You can remake the lobby, but you don't get to redo the draft. The Jade Dragons on a 5-set win streak right now. The last time they lost was like mid-July against the Olympus Bolts. They've then beaten the Kings, the Titans, the Scarabs, the Leviathans, the Valkyries. So this is a 5-set win streak that's on the line for the Jade Dragons. They might be a little bit rattled right now. This is not a team that's easy to rattle, but the Oni Warriors have come out and they've swung hard today. The Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors will find us a winner in game number 3.
And it's going to be a monumental one, at least in my eyes. A good draft from the Warriors, Mifflin, and a very, I want to say, steamroll-oriented draft from the Dragons. They want to either win incredibly fast or they're going to lose incredibly hard.
Yeah, either win fast or not at all, right? That's the strategy for the Jade Dragons right now because, I mean, I'm with Taco, man. This Oni Warriors draft, they had me at Artemis, bro. They had me in the first half, and then you fill it out with Odin. You've got the Khepri just to keep her alive. I mean, I'm not the biggest Zhonghui fan on the planet, but I think he does have a lot of damage and has a pretty good matchup into the majority of what the Jade Dragons are bringing this time around. I mean, late game team fight, it's all W key for the Oni Warriors, and they've got great gods for it, whereas the Jade Dragons, their peel potential, it's kind of not there. A wall from Fine OK and maybe some tremors from Fine OK, like a stun.
Fine OK.
Yeah, like maybe yeah. Fine OK is your late game peel because PBM's playing Fenrir and Sanford Soccer is playing the Tsukiyomi, which is both very aggressive assassins. They got to win early. If you're a Jade Dragons fan, you're hoping for a first blood in like the next 10 seconds, probably.
Well, you know, you've got a little more leeway than just 10 seconds.
You got like 3 minutes.
Point, made and kind of taken here, which is just the outright aggression. We had talked about it. The desk had mentioned it as well. Nika has outright carried a game on his own back with this Odin. That is their first pick, the first thing that they're able to scoop off. This Morgan Le Fay has to, Herwin has to have the best game of his life to make sure that this balances out. So a lot of pressure. I just think a lot of pressure is on the Dragons right now. David also mentioned a 5-set win streak. That is the most they've ever gotten in a row this year. I think they've done it once before in Phase 1. They got 5 sets in a row before losing. And so they're trying to not only break their own record, but to showcase they can keep that pressure going. And I think we're seeing a lot of where the counter pressure is going to be. Nika just stops Fine OK before he can get hit.
Yeah, I mean, stop me if you've heard this before, Gore, but I don't think the Warriors need to worry about the early game in this one. They could just wait it out. Wait for that late game team fight, then utilize their composition. I feel like I've said that every game so far in this 3-game set, and it's been their strategy through and through. Dardes, though.
Taking a little bit of damage here, but he's walking out. That's going to be a good stun. Sam is not able to find the kill. One more hit. Sam goes under the tower. Sam gets one more on top of it. He takes a tower shot for it, but Dardes still lives. They might even go for the red buff invade. Cuvo Fred is here. So is Khepri. But also PBM, making the numbers advantage in favor of the Dragons. They seem to opt into thinking that this is a bad decision. I think mainly because Sam has half health and no mana. Hurry's at half health, half mana. So they fall back, and the red buff stays alive.
Bro, they got Zhonghui passive diff. The defense that Zhonghui gets from his passive keeps him alive through all that poke and damage from Sanford Soccer. Unfortunate situation for the Jade Dragons, who would have really loved to have found that kill early on had they got it. Red buff invade is a foregone conclusion, but now, I mean, yeah, red buff picked up by Dardes. He doesn't even really fall behind in farm. He maybe misses like 2 or 3 minions to the tower. Not the biggest deal. Jade Dragons just tough luck.
Yeah, no sweat on the Warriors' back as of right now. That being said, it's almost 300 gold. That is swinging in favor of the Dragons. And that is, you know what? It sounds ridiculous for me to mention that. That's such an inconsequential amount. That has been the lead for the Warriors almost every single time around the 5-minute mark that they have turned into something more massive. And so we'll see if the Dragons can maybe do what the Warriors were doing with the farm and just in general their play and get aggressive. I am curious though, Mifflin, because as you had mentioned, you don't really need to worry too much about the early game if you're the Warriors. I mean, obviously if it gets too out of hand, then you start sweating. But do they have to worry about the late game? I mean, you had mentioned just a little bit of CC from the Dragons. Is there just not enough overall to get to the back line to deal? Well, Dardes isn't going to be dying. He's Zhang Kuei.
Yeah, who's the back line that you're diving on the Oni Warriors? It's Vote. It's just Vote. And he's playing Artemis, which is best in slot hunter right now, has great self-peel, has a Kepri. If you're diving one guy, if that's your target is just Vote, I mean, Scarab's Blessing is a single target revive, so.
I can hear Neil like cracking his knuckles, popping his
I'm
neck.
gonna press sub 4 so hard, bro. I guarantee it. Piercing Moonlight from Sanford Soccer. He thinks he's so cool. Scarab's Blessing, what's up? Vote is so safe inside of this match, and Dardes being a part of the front line means that he's likely going to be safe as well because he's always going to be flanked by Cubo Fred. He's going to be flanked by Neilma. Nika is going to be there with them as well. I think the Oni Warriors, if they drag this game to 25, 30 minutes from even, it's a long shot win for the Dragons.
It is worth talking about the fact that this is going to be a different pick for Cubo Fred. It has been this Circuit 2 games in a row, and he's been in the back line. Also worth noting that Sam was able to steal away a blue buff, and FineOK is just going to show off what he has to offer. Forces the Sentinel of Zeus out of the Nike here. Cubo Fred jumps under his tower. FineOK still hanging around a little deep, maybe actually going to help with this pincer onto Dardes, trying to go back to the tower, goes for the ult, gets some damage out there, is just barely alive as of right now. Neil is now the one who's caught out, taking a lot of poke, has the ult going to get used, but are they going to be able to make the save? Cubo's here, and it's still going to be first blood, but Sanford Soccer goes down. Now Heroin is isolated here. You might lose your mid for this one, and then a good stun from Dardes, and now a rotation from Vote is going to swing this back in favor of the Oni Warriors. Nika's over here, 5.5 minutes in, helps secure PBM, and that'll teach you to go for the Warriors red buff.
Jade Dragons trying to utilize this draft. They realize as well, okay guys, I don't like our odds in the late game. Let's push it in the early and try and make something happen. Darda is able to disengage with his beads into the tier 2 tower, and the Jade Dragons say to themselves, we have to get something. They can't keep getting away with this. We have to find something. Well, they don't find anything, and Nika finds himself a blue buff invade off the root of it as well. This is not the pace you're hoping for Jade Dragons fans, but they're still benefiting from about 100 gold lead, which, again, inconsequential. The majority is sets in Smite, but in the early game, this has been one of the larger leads we've seen.
In the last 2 games, at least. We also have to keep our eyes on it. So they burn, beads, they get rid of the Scarab's Blessing, and they just kill Neil Ma outright. So, I mean, that feels like a pretty big swing, especially because you still have beads on most members of the Dragons there, so maybe not as much clapback right now from the Warriors. And maybe an open opportunity for Sam to continue being aggressive, and this is about as aggressive as he can get. Cubo's going to watch just as the speed buff gets taken. And, I mean, that's enough to fuel you through a set, let alone just to try and finalize a game 3.
But Sanford Soccer finds Nika in the jungle, and Nika locks him inside the cage, but it's just Neilma here for now. All right, well, really.
The rest of the team shows up. Dardes gets the kill, and now it looks like they want a little bit more. Heroin is already 1 HP, and he's going to get smacked down. Cubo, credit for the kill, 2 for none, as PBM is forced to just run away alongside FineOK.
You see what I'm talking about, though, Gore? What are the Jade Dragons going to do once these fights start to go south? It's not PBM peeling for you. FineOK can't really help you because he's the initiation for your team. So the second the Oni Warriors get their second win in these engagements, I mean, it's all over. Dardes gets to exercise demons all over the backline of the Jade Dragons. There's not much they can do in response. Maybe we see a Heavenly Sprint pick up from the Dragons so they can run away faster or something along those lines, but tough going.
Well, Nika, wow, no health
That's
to
what
really
Peel
work
looks like.
with. And that's where the peel is, exactly. On the side of the Warriors.
Yep.
Not where the Dragons necessarily want it as of right now. And I think as of, 5 minutes from now, as of 10 minutes from now, I don't think that's where they're going to want it. Good control from the Warriors. And now that I'm thinking even more on it, Mifflin, I don't think there's a single member of the Warriors that doesn't have some form of peel for the rest of the team. I mean, Cubo might have the hardest to apply, but that's about it. And that's excluding the giant slow on the ult. I mean, it just feels like they are going to have some pretty hefty team fights in their favor. No Scorpion, at least on the left-hand side, has been taken. And so we'll put this all to the test when that Fury finally spawns and someone goes for it.
Yeah, I think that the Jade Dragons likely going to be the ones aggressing on the gold queue despite finding themselves a little bit behind in the kill department. XP and gold largely equalized across the board. Maybe a slight advantage to a couple of members of the Jade Dragons gold in their favor as well, but it's been all kill pressure, all Oni Warriors. They have not been able to transition it into a lead anywhere on the map, but that's because of where these fights are happening, where the Jade Dragons taking these engagements. Deep on the Oni Warriors side of the jungle. I mean, this early in the game, you die, you're only getting the value of that kill for the Oni Warriors, because if you're taking a fight at your own speed buff, what are you going to do? Rotate to the enemy speed buff? If Sam dies, he's respawned there before you even walk all the way over.
You had mentioned it and called for it. The Scorpion gets taken by the Dragons, and they are 4 members strong on the left-hand side of the map. Odin Cage dropped down in response to the walls from FineOK. So that's 2, I would argue, big ults, especially considering we've seen both of these solo laners involved in way more fights in the first 10 minutes than I think maybe the first 20 minutes of the first 2 games. So they have been in the middle of the fray. And that Gold Fury being spawned up makes that maybe even more important for them. Dardes has his ult as well, and he's 43 stacks in on that Warlock staff, taking a little bit longer than what we're used to, because it's only been Baba Yaga as of late who's been picking it up.
Yeah, he doesn't have a house to just feed him stacks the entire time.
What if the demons did that?
Yeah. Well, how many demons do you get? 40 demons. Maybe that's where the stacks came from. You trade your demons for stacks. Well, save that. Ajax, if you're listening.
Yo, Zhanghui buff, Zhanghui buff.
We're pushing for that. Not that Zhanghui really needs a buff, because look at this.
Wow, yeah, the damage. Oh my god, Hurricane is just gone. Cubo gets credit for the kill, but Dardes did a lot of the effort. Speaking of Dardes, 3-0-3, 6 kills on the board for his team, and he's been a part of every single one. And now they're going to try and push that envelope onto the neutral objective. Gold Fury started up by the Warriors, and not a soul in sight from the Dragons, save for PBM. He's actually making more of a contest than I thought he was going to, if I'm being honest with you. Gold Fury will fall before he's able to get anywhere nearby. The Dragons are going to make a proactive play, though, and go for the Pyromancer encounter.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing we saw. I'm getting deja vu. The only thing that's different right now in the pace of this one is that the Oni Warriors have more kills
what
than
if we
saw
took
in
game 2 and crunched it into 15 minutes?
Yeah, what if we just put a lot more kills in the early game, but the Jade Dragons still controlling the gold. They lose out on the bigger objective. The Gold Fury goes the way of the Warriors, but the Dragons haven't been proactively playing on the map this entire time, have created a situation that, despite going down 5 kills, they still find themselves slightly in the lead insofar as farm. That said, not enough of a lead, not enough to deal with what the Oni Warriors are going to bring to the late game of this one. I think a lot is going to ride on the plate of Hurricane and Panda Cat to just hard carry. I mean, that's the win condition for the Jade Dragons, and the win condition for the Oni Warriors is to all 5 of you stand in the same place.
Well, they'll see if they can continue doing so. Hurricane has been in this position before. You might remember, it feels like so long ago. Game number 1, very beginning of it, that was 40 minutes of that game, 30 minutes of game number 2. But he was getting blinked on constantly, harassed, and killed off almost on cooldown at the very beginning. And then so he's 0-3. He's not necessarily uncomfortable being in this position, although definitely not happy being in this position. 1 level lead for Dardes. And at 12 minutes, things are still roughly equal. It's hovering 300 to 400 gold in favor of the Dragons, especially with those objective trades. It puts the favor back in the court of the Warriors in my mind, just because of their team fight potential. But we'll see if the aggression from the Dragons steps up anytime soon.
Yeah, we got to get Panda Cat involved. Have we seen Ragnarok pick up anybody so far this game from PBM?
No.
Fenrir's ultimate has gone unutilized so far. So there are tools that the Dragons have that just have not been used recently. They have that potential, but The late game, man. I mean, that late game from the Warriors.
But late game. And honestly, that's been the like, look at game number 1 where there's, 28 minutes of play before we really start to see like hard fights coming from both sides, and then it gets to 38 minutes of play before somebody is able to pull back in favor of the Dragons. So I'm wondering, especially after game 2, Warriors kind of start dominating early on, but it's a slow and steady progression to that 20-minute mark. This one's not necessarily a slow and steady progression, but it's still marching the same notes as the previous 2 games. I mean, the Dragons had a miracle turnaround. You can't bank on that every time.
No, you can't. And they don't have that same miracle turnaround mechanic inside of a 50 caliber Ray Yanis ultimate, right? They've got a more standard mage inside of Morgan Le Fay who has consistent damage output and good self-peel, but it's not that exact same range. It's not that ability to one-shot from a massive distance. Instead, the Jade Dragons need to root their aggression in team play in the early game. We're slowly starting to reach that phase of the game where the Oni Warriors can utilize that team fight potential. So if you're a Jade Dragons fan, you're kind of hoping that something happens very soon. Likely around this Gold Fury, which so far is going to be respawning in like a minute, I think. So
maybe
that is going to
longer.
be a potential spot for the Jade Dragons to pick their engagements, but you got to deal with what? The Zhong Kui that's, what, 303 right
so
now?
Here's the front line you got to burn through. There's an Odin. There's a Nike. There's a Zhong Kui.
She's got 2 health bars.
She's got 2 health bars. And hey, you want to add another one onto that? Oh yeah, by the way, there's Kepri, who can give a 3rd health bar to a Nike.
Zhong Kui like jumps everybody. Like, there's like 40 ghosts that have his back all the time.
Yeah, yo, he's like, the Ghostbusters hate this dude. He is friends with all the right people. And so far, it's been working out. Again, 3-0-3 is part of 100% of the kills that the Warriors have been able to pick up. He has had pressure put on him. He almost got first blooded, and he might have something happen right here. PBM jumps in. No Ragnarok, no pickup, no kill.
Yeah, I mean, beads are still available for Dardes, so I guess PBM realizing that he's not going to get a ton of value from the ultimate, decides not to use it, but somebody has to burn beads, and who else is going to do it? Maybe Panda Cat with a Dark Portal, maybe FineOK with a stun.
Red buff invade from the Warriors. Successful. Maybe a little bit of poke turned back on the Neil. Panda Cat's looking for a little bit more. Cuvo's still here. Dardes and Vote have vacated the area. That's going to be all they're capable of doing. Walk in, get the buff, and really just put Heroin down. It feels, again, you look at Panda Cat, no pressure. He's 0-0-0, hasn't really felt the sting of any damage right now. Nika's the one who's getting aggressed on. FineOK goes for the ult. He gets the Trembles. Nika's about 1/3 HP, and he's just fine to continue moving on. You look at PBM, 1 death, 2 deaths for Sam, 0 deaths over here on the FineOK. All of them are landing onto Heroin. And that is not necessarily a great way to look, especially if you're trying to pivot into the late game, because I feel like Morgan Le Fay might be one of the best assets they have.
Yeah, she's got so much damage potential. She's got good range CC, good poke as well. A silver lining for the Jade Dragons right now is who you're seeing on the screen. FineOK has been
popping.
Yeah, he's been keeping Nika inside his tower, and well, that tower is not there anymore. Now, 14 minutes of the game. FineOK, equal levels, as many minutes as he has levels, is pushed the tower all the way down to the tier 2, meaning that Nika could just freeze it there. I mean, he doesn't have to necessarily match that push. This could create an opportunity where FineOK can start out-rotating this Odin, but it could also create an opportunity for Nika to just make sure that FineOK isn't getting any farm, or if he is getting farm, he's at least putting himself deep on the Oni Warriors side of the map, kind of making it way easier for Cubo Fred to rotate in and get involved.
It's still, it feels like a game of inches as of right now, although I will give a lot of credit. The Dragons have been floating just ahead consistently throughout the last few minutes. I'm never really feeling that pressure on there. It's Sunder this time for PBM, no bracer that he's picked up. He's not yet, or he hasn't backed yet to pick up that second relic. Neither has Neil. That's going to be a really big change of pace for a lot of these fights. Another change of pace is going to be another red buff invade. Warriors have the timer. Warriors know what they're doing. Warriors show up in time. All 5 of them are over here. Nika looking to get aggressive. FineOK a little late to the party. Didn't RSVP for this one. Not going to get the steal. FineOK has a good loop to the back line, but might not be where he wants to be. Heroin finally gets his red buff, and the Warriors just scatter to the winds.
Yeah, the Warriors are just kind of biding their time for this Gold Fury, the Primal Fury. Once it respawns here in a couple of seconds, don't want to leave anything up to wrist, don't want to go for a red buff invade. That could hamstring their ability to go for this larger of the 2 neutral objectives becoming available very soon. So instead, it is slow, calculated, methodical play. And one of the downsides of this Warriors late game draft is they're kind of lacking in burst potential. They're not getting instant confirmable damage. It's instead consistent damage, decent, like okay burst from Zhonghui, but it's more so about that ultimate and how much it's able to do inside of a team fight, and that takes a good deal of time for it to really ring true. Artemis is fast, auto attacks very quickly, but is a hunter at the end of the day, so it has to land a ton of auto attacks for all that damage. And then outside of that, you've got Odin damage in the late game, which is generally Bird Bomb poke, and then utilize that cage for CC. Cubo Fred doesn't really have a ton of burst either. So the Oni Warriors are not very well suited as a composition to go for these invades when the Jade Dragons are grouped up as 5. Instead, the Warriors are waiting for longer, true team fights rather than going for these picks.
I mean, that's the way to do it, right? They don't necessarily need the picks. They have such a good 5-on-5.
Yep.
If I'm looking for picks, I'm the Dragons right now. I mean, they haven't been able to find much beyond that kill on Neil, whereas everybody on the Warriors has been a part of at least one kill. And I have to only quantify that because Vote has only been a part of the single kill. But he was there, and that's what matters to him. And ultimately, they haven't really had the need, and like you said, necessity to look for anything else. They might find a grouping right here. In fact, Neil might be in a little bit of trouble. Good dash gets him away from Mike, who is more than likely going to find a stun if that connects. Primal Fury started up and DPS'd by the Dragons, sitting at half health. Fine-OK's making a loop into the back. He looks for Cubo. He's missing every single stun, and it's the aggression onto the Primal Fury. Dragons are able to secure this one, and they're looking to lock down Neil. Can Zhonghui, can Dardes, can the Warriors make a rotation in to do anything? The answer seems to be no. Primal Fury and retreat from the Dragons, gets them an objective, gets them gold lead, and then keeps them safe.
What a wildly slow response from the Oni Warriors. The Jade Dragons just pull the Gold Fury and say, all right, you guys aren't going to stop us, and the Oni Warriors didn't stop them. Instead, it was a slow rotation from Nika, who was coming from base. Fine-OK was doing a good job separating the back line, so Vote and Dardes weren't able to walk in. Cubo Fred also getting zoned by Fine-OK as well, so the Jade Dragons do confirm themselves the neutral objective, as well as a pretty sizable gold lead, now approaching 3,000 in their favor. But neutral objectives only get you so far. That gold lead only gets you so far. It's what you're able to do with that golden experience that you acquire. And, well, they're just going to go ahead and use it to get more.
Looking for the Steel Dragons. Pick up the Pyromancer. Nika just a little, I can't even tell if that was too early, too late. Either way, not going to connect and make that Pyromancer the Warriors. So, gold lead. Despite the kills reading 6-1 in favor of the Warriors. 18 minutes in, we're looking at a 3,500 uptick for the Dragons, controlling a lot of the gold and a lot of that experience, which is going to make a big difference because we're starting to hit that late game portion. We're 18.5 minutes in, Mifflin, and this is where the grouping from the Warriors can really start to make or break everything the Dragons do. Speaking of which, Sam didn't even get a chance to respond to that one. Dardes, Cubo, Nika just jump him in the jungle, and now they're jumping Heroin right under the tier 1 in mid. A little bit more damage, might be able to find the kill. They haven't followed through just yet. One more hit, and Dardes cleans that one up. PBM, Fine-OK, they're going to try to fight this away. It's actually going to be good walls.
Ragnarok picks him up, and Neilma does fall. Fine-OK still trying to get involved here, but has a ton of damage ringing into his back.
A good jump from Nika makes sure to put down his opposing solo laner. It's a 3-for-1. They lose Neil, and they're going to scream Worth.
Yeah, Oni Warriors able to get the better end of that trade, but they've been getting the better end of the majority of the team fights so far. They pick Sam for soccer out in the jungle. Hurrywin gets isolated, and being Morgan Le Fay does not have a leap. No Phantom selection for the Jade Dragons means that Nika's cages are always going to find value, and well, there's still 2 members in the grayscale for the Jade Dragons. It's just PBM here for the defense, and just PBM is all it's going to take to make sure the Oni Warriors don't stick around anymore. But Mike might want more himself. He realizing that Cubo Fred is low, could look for the pick.
It's just barely off the mark from being able to get the stun. And Cubo Fred is able to slow him down, gets the ult. That's I'd argue a huge win for PBM. Yeah, he's not worried about it, and he gets out alive. And so, still worth it for the Warriors, but maybe still better off for the Dragons. They still have the gold lead despite, again, the kills now 9-2.
Yeah, the Warriors can regroup again, though, and try and force that exact same engagement. I mean, defensive utilities used, Not many by the Warriors, just beads from Cuvo Fred. I mean, Blink just coming up for this Nike. Every other beads for them still available. Sunder's still available as well, whereas you look at the Jade Dragons and Fine-OK forced to use his beads. Hurrywin uses his beads. Even Panda Cat uses his inside of that engagement as well. So any target that the Oni Warriors are able to close gap onto is a good target as far as I'm concerned. The Jade Dragons have to play a little bit patiently for the next minute or so while they wait for those relics.
It's going to be PBM, a guiding light and a guiding force for the Dragons. I keep looking towards what he is trying to accomplish. This, so far, feels like a lot. I see this Fenrir more aggressively positioned than anything else, even though we haven't seen him act on that aggression every single time. And the Warriors are doing a kind of dance around, clearing up their camps. There's that little bit of a skirmish that'll be happening over there in the solo lane, which is honestly at this point maybe negligible because I don't think either of them are going to be dying too easily. And we've seen the rotations, despite Fine-OK's phenomenal performance in lane, it has not necessarily translated to these big swings in the team fight the same way the Odin has.
Yeah, the Warriors realize that their late game team fight is superior, but they're there, man. We're in the late game. You guys are approaching level 20 or 5 items in your build. Now's the time to start utilizing that composition. Start to be the aggressors yourself, but they've been very content to allow the Jade Dragons to pick every single fight. The first time we saw the Oni Warriors truly get aggressive in their own right, where it isn't a reactive play trying to stop the Jade Dragons invading their buffs or stop the Jade Dragons from doing a neutral objective, was that last engagement around the Tier 1 mid tower where the Oni Warriors were able to pick up Sam and then try to siege the Tier 1 tower. And they won out on that fight handily. It was not close. It was a 3-for-1 trade favoring the Warriors. I don't understand why they're not trying to reprise that performance. Gold Fury spawning up just now could be the POI that incentivizes the Warriors into action here, and it is exemplified by Nika already on the rotation out in the center of the map. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. If the Oni Warriors are able to run away with this objective, or even just a couple kills this late in the game, Fire Giant's on the menu.
This is exactly the period where you can choose to be the ones who are aggressing, or in the case of what we're seeing, the ones who are going to reply to that aggression. Tier 1 tower in mid for the Warriors, taken down. And so that is now all Tier 1s stripped away from their side of the map, even though, again, I'm going to reiterate this point as hard as I can. They're winning these fights 9 kills to 2 in this game. It is starting to sit towards a 4,000 gold lead for the Dragons, and that is the important mark to watch. They're getting aggressive on the Dragons, but nobody's taking the bait for the Warriors. This Gold Fury is hanging out, just waiting.
Bro, the Dragons are winning off of confidence alone. They're just playing like they have the better composition, and by nature of it, they're winning because of it.
Oh, now Vote's the one who's caught out one hit.
Nice.
And a good res from Kefri is going to keep him alive, but only for a little bit longer. A great dive from Sam gets the kill onto Vote, and a little bit longer, it's going to be a jump onto Neil. PBM secures the kill there, 2 for 0. But the turnaround, Dardas almost has enough, but can't quite kill Fine-OK. They isolate Hurrywin. He's 0 and 5, but it's cost you everyone on your team so far. Cuvo is running away at the very end, but it's the full-on deicide. It's going to be a Fury or a back and run to the FG.
Yeah, I think it's FG. And again, this is the Jade Dragons. They're just grouping up better. They're just saying, all right, look, the Oni Warriors are clearly scared of us, dude. I mean, these guys are clearly afraid. Let's just go ahead and exploit that. And the Oni Warriors, despite having such a good late-game team fight, aren't using it. I mean, that's the Jade Dragons walking to duo lane, isolating Vote, finding the pick. Vote gets revived by Neil, but by that point, the Jade Dragons has already done so much damage to the separated Oni Warriors that there's no comeback mechanic. It doesn't matter how good your team fight is if you don't utilize it, and so far, the Warriors have not been doing so. Jade Dragons find themselves with a commanding gold lead. Fire Giant on 5 members. Pyromancer getting picked up as well. I'd argue that 24 minutes in, the lead that we're looking at with Fire Giant on 5 members, the Oni Warriors may have missed the bus here. Their team fight is strong, but not strong enough to make up for 9,000 gold and 10,000 experience.
Yeah, the control just outrageously loud in favor of the Dragons right now. PBM gets a stun and a Ragnarok pickup on Neil. Not even able, he didn't have his ult, but not able to use it even if he had. Locked down, CC'd. And remember that Gold Fury? Oh yeah, that's the Dragons too. They just got all 3 neutral objectives like it was nothing after that fight. You had mentioned confidence, and a lot of people tell you confidence is key, and so far that is exactly what it is for the Dragons. I mean, they're just saying we're going to win, and the Warriors are letting them.
This is fake it till you make it, smite the game, man. Like, Jade
Hurry's
Dragon's
0-5.
Yeah, he's 0-5, bro. What are you guys scared of on the Warriors? Neilma dead for 12 seconds, and the Warriors with 4 members have to defend this Phoenix.
They're going to step up this time to fight, but the minions are here, and they're ready to go. That Phoenix is dying incredibly quickly, and it's just going to take a couple more hits, but they're not going to be able to find it. PBM jumps away and maintains his life. Heroin gets his first one on the board, kills off Dardes. Panda Cat does go down, though. This is a good fight from the Warriors. They wipe 4, almost 5 of the Dragons. It's just the catch-up for PBM, showcasing what their team fight can do when they finally put it together.
Gore, I am raging, bro. That was a 4 versus 5 against Jade Dragons with the largest lead they've had so far this game with Fire Giant on 5 members. By the way, Neilma dead that entire engagement. He wasn't there. You're not even utilizing one of the best tools of your team fight, the revive for one of your teammates, and the Oni Warriors win it handily. And it's not off the back of individualistic mechanical play. It's not like Dardes comes up in a huge way doing something crazy. My man blinked in and pressed 4. That's all he did, and he hit everybody with every single one of his ghosts. And that's all I've been asking for this entire match so far, Gore. The Oni Warriors have been forced into a position where their back's against the wall, rat in a cage, and finally they bare their fangs, and turns out those fangs are poison tipped. You could have just been using those the whole time.
Well, you wouldn't guess this was a power play for the Dragons right now, as they are tanking down in terms of where the XP is. Everyone caught up on the Warriors. They're level 20 now, save for Neil, who's level 16. One more level, he can upgrade that starter, maybe the next important and most important spike that they're going to get in the next few minutes. And of course, they lose out on a lot of pressure, but you have to look at the map statement. I mean, that Phoenix on left is still weak. They're missing most of a tier 2 health. None of their tier 1s are standing. It is a good spot if you're still the Dragons. Despite that overwhelming showcase that the Warriors can win a team fight pretty handily, they have to do it a little more consistently, I think, for me to start banking on it.
This is the battle of overwhelming confidence versus overwhelming strength, and the Jade Dragons, confident again, get smacked inside of a 4v5 team fight, and it's them aggressing on the map. It's them pushing into this tower. Granted, yes, they do have map state advantage. Yes, they do have a bit of a gold lead at this point, but gold's not the most important thing 30 minutes into a game, and if it is important for the Oni Warriors, they probably shouldn't be allowing the Jade Dragons just to push for free. Only 1 Fire Giant left on PBM. Oni Warriors, though, realizing that they've maintained the base, can at least regroup now, wait it out a little bit longer, utilize all the wards they already have in pocket, and start to work their way into the Fire Giant. I don't think they're willing to give this one up yet again.
5 towers total on the map, 4 of them are on the Dragon side, and they're hanging out more than healthy. I think a very just tip of damage done to 2 of them here, one in the tier 2 and mid, and then the tier 1 and right having a little bit done. But those will fall and crumble pretty quickly 30 minutes into the game. This is about the time the Warriors were winning in game number 2. And admittedly, they were also winning at this point in game number 1, but they didn't win the game about 10 minutes afterward. And so we'll figure out if they can continue any sort of onslaught, the way that we just saw around that defense, around this FG. Unless Fino K and Dragons, yeah, they're kind of looking for more blood. They're not able to find anything here. I think they're waiting for this FG strongly on the side of the Warriors.
Yeah, Warriors have such strong defensive warding right now that if the Jade Dragons do get aggressive, the Warriors know exactly where they are at all points. Instead, the Jade Dragons do have advantage on the Fire Giant pit itself, so the Warriors going to have to act as human wards by walking in and checking once that Fire Giant does spawn up. But as far as defensive positioning, I think the Warriors can essentially sit inside of their own back camps if they're worried about getting engaged on by the Jade Dragons. As of now, though, the Warriors have slowly worked their way forward, but standing on a ward of the Dragons here, someone's got to clear that one out.
FG Pyromancer going to be crashing down, I believe, in that order, pretty much at the exact same time. Pyromancer comes in, and there's the Fire Giant. So a little bit backwards from where I had it. Either way, they're both available. And Pyromancer's here. This is typically what we would see a team maybe try to bait out. They'll start the Pyro, maybe start DPS on the FG, and see what they can get the other team to bite on. Worst case scenario, and that's, engagement, you get a Pyromancer. Best case scenario, you get a couple of kills. I guess actually the worst case scenario is your team gets wiped and then you lose the game. And
yeah.
that's definitely...
That sucks.
Yeah, that one blows as far as scenarios can go. Pyromancer is just a little bit away. Warriors going to be able to clean that one up. Cage going to be dropped by Nika. PBM pulled into the wall. The damage is nowhere to be found from the Warriors, though. And that's going to be the frenzy jump in from PBM. The same dive coming in from Sam, but he is isolated and alone. The Fire Giant gets a little bit of the damage, and Vote is the one who cleans up the kill. Now a good stun from Nika could be all they wrote. The rest of the Dragons run back. Warriors get one kill, and then they call it patience.
Well played from the Jade Dragons, and specifically FineOK, to make sure that that fight doesn't go much worse. Once Nika separates the engagement, Dardes immediately aggresses onto FineOK, who was able to zone off 3 members for the longest time. Sanford Soccer, not lucky enough though, it doesn't benefit from that disengage. Is the sole member of the Jade Dragons to fall here, but there's that team fight prowess on display yet again. How often is it that you have a team that is roughly 8,000 gold down, able to just fight in handily like that and win out? I would argue that the Oni Warriors at this 8,000 gold deficit, 31 minutes of the game, are favored in the engagements.
We'll see if they can keep that up. Hey, guess what? Here's the Nika cage. Panda Cat is isolated in this one. The card is thrown on him. He goes for the dash, but Nika is chasing him down. The up-down jump is going to secure that. Dardes is low in the back, but they're not able to secure the kill. Once again, a 1-for-none in favor of the Warriors, and they fall back.
This time, a much more valuable target picked up. Panda Cat dead for 50 seconds, and that was the Warriors fighting without their strengths. I mean, Neoma's ultimate still down from that first skirmish. Vote's ultimate was still down. Dardes' ultimate was still down. It was just Nika with his ultimate available for that fight, and it's all that it required, really. No Phantom selection from the Jade Dragons means that if you're able to lock down Panda Cat, he jumps out of the cage. Well, the spear now follows you. It's going to knock you out of your stealth. He was also carded, so that's going to knock you out of your stealth as well. And the front line of the Oni Warriors is an unstoppable force.
Almost able to beat their timers. Nika, that Breastplate of Valor, doing a lot of work. Almost has his ult available one more time. PBM is the one who's getting locked down, forced to use the Ragnarok. The shield is going to be good, but maybe not good enough. He has to leap out of the cage from Nika. He stays alive, but that is more than you could say for FineOK. Vote gets the Scarab's Blessings, trying to get it to burn, but it's not going to pop in time. Sam is able to secure the Hunter on the other side, but it's going to cost him his life.
Wow!
He gets 2, and he stays alive as of right now. Finally, the follow-through from the Warriors, but he gets the dual lane for himself. That is a good trade from Sam.
Yeah, Bloodforge value coming through in spades here for the Jade Dragon. Sanford Soccer reaches into his hat and pulls out a miracle inside of this team fight. 2 for 2. In favor of really neither team, but you'd probably favor the Jade Dragons considering how these team fights have been going in the last couple of minutes in favor of the Oni Warriors. And the reset back to neutral leaves Relics as the only thing setting up this next fight and where the disparity lies. And Relics across the board are generally favoring the Oni Warriors. Every single one of their beads still available, whereas the Jade Dragons, 20 seconds left on FineOK's. Frenzy gets popped there by PBM. That's likely not going to be available for this next Fire Giant fight. Aegis used by Panda Cat. If the Jade Dragons can extend this next engagement, make it wait just 30 or so more seconds, then we're looking at a dead even engagement yet again. And from dead even at this phase of the game, I think I still favor the Warriors.
Mifflin, I'm going to be completely candid with you. I forgot there were neutral objectives elsewhere on the map to even focus on.
Fire, yeah.
I've completely blanked on that Primal Fury being alive because I've been so concerned. I mean, the Pyromancer, just as a timer, was killed, I want to say, like a third of the way into this kind of Fire Giant dance that's been going on. And it has a 5-minute respawn timer. It's about a minute and a half out. So they have been dancing over this one. Finally, though, the Dragons are able to move outward, pick up another objective, and they have a 9,000 gold lead right now, Mifflin, but you wouldn't know it from the way this is being played.
No, it's a dead even match. 34 minutes in, gold's starting to mean less and less as time goes on. It's about elixirs and wards now, and you should be able to afford wards every time.
PBM looks to get locked down. He ults, he gets the shield and has that CC immunity. Neil is going to be able to stay alive this time. The dive from FineOK isn't enough. Dardes gets the kill, and Vote is saved by Neil. The hello, Panda Cat's able to pick up one in return, and they're finding a second one. Panda Cat looking to continue the onslaught. PBM is the only low member in this engagement for the Dragons, mainly because FineOK died in the process. They go 2 for 1, And each fight steadily transferring in favor of the Dragons.
The Dragons are just, they're backline, it's backline diff right now. The damage output from Vote is always going into Fine OK, whereas the backline damage of Panda Cat and the backline damage of Hurrywin is going into priority targets. Dardes, acting as a frontliner inside of this Zhongqi, means that he's a priority target that is very easy to hit for the Jade Dragons. And Panda Cat, at 100% HP, that entire engagement was free casting. Hurrywin ends that fight at 100% HP as well. Vote was under threat the entire time. Oni Warriors, man, they gotta work their way forward with this draft.
Confidence versus strength as of right now. Fire Giant is being taken by Confidence. The Dragons are the ones aggressing onto it. Nika jumps in, gets the stun onto Sam, and Cuvo Fred goes to the backline, gets the slow onto Panda, but now he's isolated, and the damage dealers are getting a priority target. Panda's gonna be able to kill him outright. The fire still incredibly low, and the Warriors forced to fall back. Nika should have eyes, but is it gonna be too late? Yes! The Dragons secure this one for all 5 members, and now they are fully in control of the game.
Enhanced Fire Giant on 5, only one tier 2 tower standing between them and the 3 exposed birds of the Oni Warriors, but this is exactly where the Oni Warriors got their first actual super clean 5-on-5 engagement. Harken back about, what was it, like 10 minutes ago
yeah, it was
now?
A while.
Where they were able to completely crush the Jade Dragons in a 4 versus 5. The game simplifies in a siege state, and in a simplistic match, I think that's really where this Oni Warriors draft can shine. The Jade Dragons certainly primed and ready to end this game. Any pick is going to be incredibly valuable to them, but this is also going to be the Oni Warriors at their strongest facet of the match, when the game is really just about, I'm going to stand in front of you, you're going to stand in front of me, let's duke it out. That's where gods like Zhongqi, that's where gods like Khepri, Odin, now that there's no Phantoms, so the Jade Dragons can really flourish. So the Dragons, although very strong in a very good seat of power right now, they're not out of the clearing just yet. They need to execute well on this siege.
You've got to hold your breath. 14,000 gold, but the Warriors were up at this same minute mark, 12,000 gold, when they aggressed into a Dragons Phoenix in game number 1 and ended up losing that fight, lost the Fire Giant fight right afterward, and lost that game. The Dragons maybe not thinking too heavily about that game just because they know how they were able to win it. I'm sure they recognize, as you've highlighted, the defense position from the Warriors, and the fact that they have a 6th man in the Phoenix is even better for them.
Yeah, now they're actually having to do it into 5 members of the Oni Warriors here. Every single one of them up and ready.
Neil's going to get aggressive. He goes in, forces beads out of Nika, and they're turning the damage around like it's nothing. I mean, Sam takes most of his health bar, but Dardes, as well as Neil, are almost burned out. Cuvo gets burned down completely, and now it is the true 4v5. They do not have the Nike for this fight.
Dardes uses that ultimate a little bit too early on, puts himself in a position where he can't blink in aggressively, so Sam for Soccer walks away. Dardes does not connect his stun, and, well, Sam able to sustain back up with the enhanced Fire Giant, and Bloodforge is ready for the second Phoenix.
That's going to be Nika going in. A great cage, gets 4 members of the Dragons, but they almost burn Nika down in the process. The heal and the res from Neil is going to be enough to keep him going, but that means Vote won't have that if they get aggressed on, and Vote is getting aggressed on. Fine OK runs straight to the back line and forces them to run back to the fountain. The Dragons are running into the Titan room, and they're burning that Titan down faster than the Warriors can reply. It doesn't matter if you need any more kills. Cuvo was all they picked up, 2 Phoenixes and a Titan, and the Dragons win.
Jade Dragons, the confidence is glowing through these players right now. I mean, that's the only way they can win that one, right? If they just pretend like their team fight is straight up stronger for the entire game. Feels like to me that the Oni Warriors came into this match with a very definitive plan. All right, if we make it to the late game, we win. It's as clear as that. That's how strong our team fight is. So they let the Jade Dragons get Gold Furies, get Pyromancers, take towers, take small engagements, split up the fight, because the Oni Warriors, why would we group up right now? We're not trying to fight. We're waiting for the late game. And the late game never came.
No, the late game came to them.
Yeah, it came to them. It never came for them. And, well, the Jade Dragons, with their infinite confidence, were able to keep that match inside of their own pace.
I mean, that last left-hand Phoenix defense from the Warriors, so this is going back about 15 minutes ago, if not longer,
maybe like 20.
Looked really, really good and had me hoping for maybe a little bit more at the very end of the game. The Dragons heard no such thing. They saw no defense. They saw nothing quell them. They run through. They win the set and take it 2-1. We'll be right back to break this one down and look at the rest of the week right after this.
Welcome back to the SPL, powered by our friends over at Alienware. And Alienware brings us all this action, all the 3-game sets that we've got here, and at least this weekend of the SPL. Feels like we've got a whole bunch of them. This one was very contested. And, of course, our pros were playing this game on their Alienware rigs at home. And if you want to be playing on an Alienware computer or whatever that may be as well, head on over to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW for a sweet old discount on some of that gear you can pick up for yourself. Follow Alienware on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and then AlienwareArena.com for giveaways, and to join the growing global community. Once again, that's smitegame.com/Alienware and code SMITEAW at checkout for a cool discount. Taco is with me to talk about what we just saw there, Taco. And what did it, first off, umbrella statement, what an exciting set, right?
Yes.
There's sometimes a concern, and maybe it's not a concern, but with these Dragon sets that things can just be over super quickly. They're going to steamroll their opponents. And it's a concern because we love these long competitive sets. This one is long and competitive. The Jade Dragons do still win. I still think a surprise that the Oni Warriors put up as big a fight as they did. But at the end of the day, the consistency factor maybe wins out here for the Dragons.
And we say it all the time for a reason. As strong as a composition can look on paper, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that the win-out factor is going to be 100% in their favor. We talked about some of those win conditions involved for the Jade Dragons, largely circulating around the picks just having to take place. The execution had to be perfect, and the Jade Dragons just continue to deliver. I mentioned the overcomplications because this just feels like a team that is just so individually strong, mechanically speaking, that they managed to pull it off with, I think, drafts that honestly, Dolson, probably have no business being, like, handling the Oni Warriors composition as well as they did. They just, they saw the Oni Warriors hesitate, and they leaped on it.
They did, and they had a composition that felt kind of perfect for that. Panicat in these fights was nuts. Look at this. The Oni Warriors, they're winning the beginning of this fight, and Panicat on Izanami, 37 minutes into a game where full build is chilling in the back line, slinging autos in to the Oni Warriors, and you're going to be hard-pressed to win a fight when that's the case. 6-2-4 for Panicat. Everyone else on the Jade Dragons received, outside of PBM, received a healthy serving of deaths. Sanford Soccer with 6, Hurrywin with 6, but 26,000 damage and also 28,000 for Hurrywin. Got to give a shout out there. Difficult to be bargained with. Dardes on the Jean-Qui Taco did 32k damage, but it's. I think what you bring up there during that highlight reel is important. Is that I still look at that Oni Warriors draft and I'm thinking, damn, I can't believe they got that. And it's just sometimes the shot calling and the ability to take a deep breath in those games is what sets a team like the Jade Dragons apart.
Yeah, the Jade Dragons, I really think that this set kind of just encompasses and really just highlights again how strong each of these players are in their respective roles and the way that they like synergize off each other, even when the outcome looks as though it's not going to be at all in their favor. I mean, Mike was quite literally just a doggo punching bag for the vast majority of that game, but it's important because him alongside of Fine-OK, I think they were kind of unsung heroes for the Jade Dragons here towards the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, Panicat, Hurrywin, Sam, obviously all doing their part, but the space creation was definitely key here.
Massive factor for the Jade Dragons. The doggo punching bag himself joins me for the post-game interview. PBM standing by, of course, to talk a little bit about what goes on here. Mike, this is a long set, 3-gamer. A lot of these games go deep into the late game, back and forth. Good or bad, what's your takeaway on how you guys played here today?
I think we were a little bit hectic and sloppy today. I think a lot of picks throughout like their early to mid game that sort of disrupted the game being organized. Kind of from either team is what happened a bit. So we're definitely not happy with how we played, but that's just kind of what happens when you play against a good team. You expect there to be some adversity.
And the Oni Warriors, absolutely a team that can show up and make things interesting. Rewind with me, if you will, back to game one. I don't want to mince words with you here, Mike. You guys are effectively losing 95% of that game. You're pushed back under a Phoenix, and then you just kind of roll over the last couple of fights there. In game one specifically, did you guys just kind of know the Oni Warriors were up against the clock, and eventually your composition was going to turn that game around?
We felt strong the entire time in 5v5s. We just kind of spent the game discussing how we wanted to play our like initiations and like whether we wanted me to go in first or Alec, how we were sequencing like Sam's ult with Tyler's ult, and I think we just didn't really figure that out until maybe the fight before that Phoenix fight where we wiped them, or on the Phoenix fight itself. It also helps when your Janus ult hits their carry 2 fights in a row, which are the fights that we won the game off of.
Right.
But I think even without them, we had a lot of fights where people would be like, a majority of their team would be like sub 10, 20%. So we just need to clean it up, and I think the game could have been a lot better.
Right. Well, so what seems to us like losing, I say losing, is more you guys buying some time to figure things out and happen to be under the Phoenix where things turn around. Final thoughts from me here, Mike. Down your last stretch of 3 games, you've got some tough opponents. You're going up against the Bolts, the Kings, and the Titans. Of course, you're locked and loaded for the Phase 2 playoffs. Tough stretch of games. What's the team focus moving into the playoffs, especially up against some difficult opponents?
I think that if we I mean, of course we can lose any of those sets, or all of those sets. Why not lose them all? But I think as long as we have like if we're like 2-1, I think we have a pretty good chance of at least being 2nd seed. And if we 3-0, I think we have a really good chance of being 1st seed. So like you said, obviously good teams that we're playing against, but just staying focused match to match and preparing as best we can.
Feels like you kind of control your own destiny in that way. You get the Bolts and the Kings, and those are the teams right around there for 1st, 2nd seed, things like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun for us to watch play out. Mike, congrats on the long, grueling win today, but a win nonetheless. I'll let you go celebrate with the rest of the team.
Thanks, Dave. Have a good night.
Yeah, sure thing. You too. And so, Mike, I think the right way to look at that, where you get the win if you're the Jade Dragons. Not easy, not the cleanest, but it's a win nonetheless, and they absolutely put themselves in contention for higher seeding moving through to the Phase 2 playoffs. And now we'll get a quick look at those standings, and this is what's important. So 1 win behind the Kings and the Bolts. And hey, the Jade Dragons, Taco, get to play both the Kings and the Bolts in 2 of their last 3 matchups. And so when I say control your own destiny, certainly feels that way, and those are going to be some fun ones to watch.
Without a doubt, Jade Dragons kind of just the epitome of the whole saying of it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And for them, they could potentially look to close things out as the #1 seed heading into the playoffs here for Split 2. But again, it's going to come based on how their performances vary up against the Camelot Kings and the Bolts later on.
And the Bolts matchup is what we'll have to round out the week on Sunday. Jade Dragons versus Olympus Bolts. What a way to end the weekend. But don't worry, you don't have to wait that long for a top 4 matchup tomorrow, Saturday, to end the day. The Atlantis Leviathans and the Camelot Kings face off with one another, but not before we get to watch the Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors battle it out. So after Taco, now what we've seen from the Oni Warriors today, they lose, of course, to the Jade Dragons, but a strong performance. They did not make it easy. I think the Oni Warriors have to be going into that Scarabs matchup with some confidence.
To a certain extent.
Maybe.
I think I might have agreed with you like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but Solar Scarabs in their most recent set this past weekend, Dave, I mean, they were looking pretty nice. Scream, I think, really coming into his own on this roster. He's definitely seeming to make the difference there for SOT in terms of just how well they're able to read off each other. So Oni Warriors definitely still have their work cut out for them, but really good showing for them here today, and I think that we're finally starting to see some of the potential that we've always known this team to be capable of.
Confident in their own abilities, but definitely not so confident that you're going to count out a quickly improving team like the Solar Scarabs. That will be our first matchup tomorrow in the SPL. As always, we have the SCC at 11 a.m. tomorrow, Eastern time, of course, if you want to tune in for some of that. Then 1 p.m. Eastern time, Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors will start off the day. And then the Leviathans versus the Kings to round out our broadcast tomorrow. You don't want to miss any of it. The road to the Phase 2 playoffs is actually kind of getting close to being over, so make sure to tune in tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern time for the SPL, 11 a.m. Eastern time for the SCC. But on behalf of myself, Taco, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.